If you have a favourite Monster Energy athlete, chances are Mitch Covington had something to do with it. As VP of Sports Marketing at Monster, Mitch and his team have been the driving force behind some of the most iconic deals in action sports, motorsports and beyond. From Cooper Webb to Tiger Woods, Monster backs the athletes and sports properties who tap into their inner beast, the ones who rise when it matters most. But none of this happens by chance. Mitch's eye for authenticity and commitment to supporting athletes who bring intensity and personality to everything they do has helped Monster grow into a global force in sports and culture.
Motocross, Supercross was our DNA. It's who we are. It's the soul of our brand.
This is Mitch Covington's story and a look into a brand that shaped the industry we love. Gypsy Gang, welcome Mitch Covington to the podcast. Well, let's get right into it. Mitch Covington is joining us on the podcast, and stoked for this one. We were just talking my first ever time that I guess the Covington name came across or was brought up to me was when Tom was doing a tryout for JDR, and then he went on to go to Europe and do his thing. So you've had like multiple different entry points into the industry, and then obviously doing what you're doing with Monster. But yeah, you've been around a long time. Well,
it doesn't seem like it, but you're right. It is a long time now. I think, I started out being an agent for Johnny Greaves, off-road truck racer.
No way.
It was my first, other than being a moto dad, which goes back to 2000 and around 2000, year 2000, my older two sons, not Thomas, but his two older brothers started racing motorcycles and dirt bikes. And but I didn't get involved in the industry. I was in the garbage business. And my kids started racing motocross because my wife says, you don't ever spend any time with your kids. You play golf all the time. You got to spend time with the kids. And I'm like, so I take them fishing, and my older two, they just, all they do is their lines tangled up and they want to fight all the time. I'm like, oh, it's a disaster. So yeah. My buddy was bragging that his son had a dirt bike and was racing. And I'm like, well, maybe my kids are like that. So I go to a race and I see these people having fun and camped out, and I'm like, well, let's go get some dirt bikes. This might be fun.
You had no idea the can of worms that you just opened up.
No, it was amazing. And me and that guy went to high school together, and I still see him from time to time. And I say, it's all your fault, Doug. And it's you inspired me to go check this out, and here I am. But that goes back to about 2000. Thomas came along, won Loretta Lynn's in 2003.
Yeah. And
I knew nothing about sponsorship. I knew nothing about the industry at all. I barely knew anything about dirt bikes. And this guy that worked for Fox, the clothing company Fox, he saw us at a regional a month before Loretta Lynn's, and Thomas beat his kid on a PW. And he just, nobody's ever beat my kid. And I said, he says, but I work for Fox. And he introduced himself, and we talked there for a minute. It was just another dad, right? And so I didn't think anything about it. I get to Loretta Lynn's, and I think Thomas won the first moto or something when he was, I think this was his 5-year-old year. And the guy comes up to me and says, hey, you remember me? And I'm like, no, maybe, I don't know.
Keep talking.
Yeah, and he says, from Fox, so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember meeting you. And he goes, well, my boss wants to meet with you. And so I go up there, and they say, hey, we want to sponsor your son. And I said, well, okay, what does that mean? And they says, well, we want him to wear Fox clothes. And I'm like, could we get a pair of boots? And he says, you can get all the boots you want. And I said,
that's so crazy.
And I'm like, can we get a uniform? Like pants and suit and everything? Like, he says, look, man, we're going to give you a catalog, or you go online. We're going to give you a phone number, and you call him and you tell him what he needs. I'll go back, tell my wife, man, we've struck gold.
We
made it. This is amazing, man. But anyway, so
that's so innocent.
Yeah. I really was. I remember when he told me, my boss wants to meet with you. I go back to the motorhome and I tell my wife, I said, this guy from Fox wants to meet with me. Maybe they want to sponsor him. And she goes, what can we get? And I said, I'm going to hit him up for a pair of boots and a helmet. That's what costs the most, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, rest is history. It goes on. But the industry part of it is I was VP of sales and marketing of a company that made trash compactors.
Yeah, right.
A big one. And I took another job and moved to Wisconsin. They made, I was a VP of sales and marketing. They sold garbage trucks. And while I was up there, Thomas had won Loretta Lynn's the first year. The year before I moved up there, and I move up there, and I go check out the racing in Wisconsin. Cold, you know. I get there, and there's really only one kid that can compete, you know. And his dad drove up every week in this really fancy, nice rig, like really, really nice. And so finally, I go over to him, and he's like our competitor, right? Where our kids are going at it every weekend, and it's up north. And I said, "Hey, bud, what do you do?" He goes, "I race trucks." And I'm like, "Trucks? What kind of trucks?" He goes, "Well, you know, I'm racing next weekend in Crandon, Wisconsin."
Yeah.
Says, "Come on up. They have a little mini bike race for the kids. Thomas and CJ can race, and I'll show you what I do." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go up there with my old beat-up camper and pull up. 50,000 people camped out. This is a huge event.
Yeah, Crandon's huge.
Yeah,
right?
it blew my mind, man. I never seen anything like it. I go up there, and he wins by a mile, and they give him a check for $250,000 on ESPN. And I'm like, whoa, this is heavy. I love it. And so we hang out, and we get to kind of being friends, and Johnny goes, "Hey, man," says, I need an agent. Says, I got this Indian tribe that sponsors my truck, and they're in a year, out a year, you never know. And he says, I just want to drive a truck, man. I don't want to do any business. I just want to drive a truck. He says, you're a business guy. And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about selling sponsorship, Johnny." He goes, "Yeah, you do." And I'm like, how can I help? He's like, "I'll buy you a ticket to Las Vegas to Supercross finals." And says, "You go walk around in the pit and you find me some of those Supercross sponsors, because I used to race dirt bikes. I was good at it and didn't really make it in that, but I want one of those sponsors like they got. They got some cool sponsors." I'm like, "Okay, you buy me a ticket, man. Let's go." So I go by myself to Supercross. Never been to Supercross.
Had you watched it?
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm walking around. I go in people's pit and like Kawasaki or OGO, anybody I could find in the industry, and say, "Hey, I represent this off-road truck racer." So finally I see a Monster van sitting out there, a motorhome wrapped with Monster, and the party was going on out in front of it. I go over there and said, "Hey, who's in charge of marketing here?" And they said, "Well, that would be Monster Joe," a guy named Joe Parsons. He's still with the company. Unbelievable guy. But anyway, it was way back in the day.
So what year is this?
Yeah, we're talking 2002, 3.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe. Yeah, it had to have been 2003.
So this is early
yeah.
days.
2003, 2004, I think, actually. Maybe 2003. So I go, so they say he's in the motorhome. So I knock on the motorhome. Smoke comes bellowing out, you know. Joe comes through the fog, comes out and goes, "Hey, buddy, what do you need?" You know. And I said, "I work for this off-road truck racer, and I'm looking for sponsors." And he goes, "Yeah, who?" Like, "Who are you?" You know? And I said, "A guy named Johnny Greaves." And I was ready to spell it, because I'm like, no way in hell they go know who Johnny Greaves is way out here in Las Vegas, right? No way. He goes, "Johnny Greaves? He's a fucking legend." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's him." And he says, "Well, man, I spent all my money on this other deal already. If I'd have known, I would have took Johnny. He's the best there is." And he says, "Man, will you give me his helmet? Maybe just a small deal. I don't have much money left." And I said, "I don't know." He said, "How much for the helmet?" And I said, "I'll be right back." I called Johnny and I said, "Hey, I got this energy drink called Monster. They want to do your helmet deal, man." And he says, "Get them, man. They're cool." He says, "Just anything they'll give me." He says, "You can do it for free, right? It doesn't matter. Try to get $5,000 bucks." And so I go back and I say, "Hey, Joe, it's going to be $75,000 for that helmet." And he said, "Oh, man, $75,000. Whoa." He says, "I got to do it, man." He says, "I'll give you 40. So I go back, call Johnny, or act like I'm calling Johnny, right? I go back, I come back and say, "All right, Joe, he's going to do it. We'll try it for a year." So we do this deal for $40,000 for Johnny's helmet, right?
He wanted 5.
Yeah. And he's happy. Well, we're all happy. Well, the rest is history. They come to a race. Johnny wins with 2 flats, and Mark Hall and Rodney Sachs. That Mark invented the brand, and Rodney's one of the founders.
Yeah.
And they come there and they said, we have to have his whole truck. This guy's the man. And so long story short, we ended up selling a really big deal. It was Monster's probably biggest motorsports deal at the time, and for Johnny, and that was my first foray into the business of sports. Was I became Johnny's agent because he had told me I didn't have a contract. I never had a contract with Johnny, but he says, "Hey, go out there, you get me sponsors. I give you 20% of whatever you get me. That's our deal, handshake deal, you know." So we do this deal, and he goes, "Maybe we should do a contract." You know, he was so happy to get it, right? You know, and we're like, I said, "Man, I don't do contracts with buddies. You know, you just either pay me or you won't." Right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "I'll pay." So I was, anyway, long story, but but that's how I got into the business through Johnny Greaves.
Dude, that's insane. There's like so much there to pull apart. I got just a saying comes to mind when I hear this. There's no school like the old school.
Well, I'm definitely the old school these days.
Yeah,
But
that is as old school as it gets. That's so cool. So, I mean, all right, you're selling your VP of sales and marketing at a garbage disposal, like garbage truck. I mean, $5,000 to you at that time in the business world that you were in, you were just like, what the fuck would I do with $5,000? Like, is that kind of the perspective you had in a way, like coming from that world?
yeah, you know, I was just happy to make a sale for Johnny, right? You know, this is something totally new to me, right? If you think about it. And like going off on this adventure to Supercross, which is not something I would normally have done at that point in my life. I was selling garbage trucks for a living, right? Or basically. And going to races, though, because me and Thomas and my other two kids, man, we were racing every weekend.
Good.
Yeah, we're racing every weekend, man,
Yeah.
them local races. And, you know, I was your typical consumer of dirt bikes, right, and parts.
Yeah.
And typical moto dad, I like to say, right? And so, I mean, I was eat up with it. My youngest son had just won Loretta Lynn's on a 50, and I just got sponsors, and, you know, I was
Just all in.
just all in, like
Yeah,
they do,
yeah.
right?
And
Like,
out of the blue, too.
Yeah.
Like just no background at all.
No, you know, when I was a kid, I had a XR75, and my buddy down the street said, "You ought to come to the motocross track and race it." And I talked my dad into taking me one night to this old country town in Alabama where they had a race.
Is that where you grew up, Alabama?
Alabama,
Yeah.
North Alabama, near Tuscaloosa,
Yeah.
about a small town, one red light. And there was an old guy in town that raced. He had a Penton motorcycle, and he was a legendary motocross guy in our little town, right? And so my dad called him up and said, "Hey, my son wants to race these motorcycles. I don't know, his mother's not going to let him do it, but show him a little thing." He takes me out behind his house, and he had a little round circle track. And he told me what a berm was and how to take a berm. And then 2 days later, we go to this track together. And, man, I was so slow. You could probably see my tracks behind me when I went by, you know. And
Measured your lap time with a sundial.
yeah. And so we did that, and we get home. The next morning, my dad comes in there and says, "Mama says it's over. No more racing. You can keep your dirt bike, but no more racing," right? So that was my only experience with dirt bike racing. I went on, played football, and did normal stuff after that. But so when my kids came along and I was looking for something to do, you know, I always liked dirt bike racing, right? Because of back then, you know.
Yeah.
But when we first started with my kids, my older two kids, Tyler and Alex, they took to it way more than they took to football and baseball and stuff. Once they taste that adrenaline, and this is kind of what I observed is once you take kids and they get that adrenaline rush of racing dirt bikes where it's all on them and it's all adrenaline all the time, and then you take them to the little league or the t-ball or the even football, and they're standing around most of the time, even in the huddle or in the outfield or in the field.
Couldn't agree more.
There's no adrenaline going on. They're just like, "Hey, man, I hope they hit me a ball or hope I get a hit next time," or whatever. It's nothing like being on the gate and holding on to a motorcycle, man, and going, you know, holding on for your life or whatever, right? Once they taste that adrenaline, it's a drug.
Yeah.
And then Dad gets the drug because his little baby now is gonna be somebody, win a trophy and win them gnarly ass dirt bikes, you know. Dad gets the drug, and man, I could write you a book on parenting and motocross, right? Not that I did it right. I'm just saying, observing, being around it, right? And so anyway, it was it was a life changer for my family,
Yeah,
not just
massive.
me. Yeah.
Completely changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. We were your typical guys. I grew up playing golf and football, and my dad was a contractor. He didn't ever had a motorcycle. But it totally changed the total direction of our family.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up leading us here. As the story goes, if you want me to
Keep going.
continue, so things progressed with Monster and Johnny Greaves.
Yeah.
Because the guy was just so damn good.
Before we go there, actually, you are right. I've thought about this, like, just to stay on the boys and racing. And, like, I think about exactly what you said, but an extra layer on top of that. And I think that this is kind of something that you see, like, had Alex Martin in here yesterday. And he's retired from racing and just gone on to build a phenomenal business. He's already run 6 marathons this year. Like, he's a goer. Like, he's an absolute gun, But so let's rewind to, like, 4-year-old Tom or your older boys. Like, think about the responsibility that you're handing over to the kid to be responsible for a motorcycle that's burning and exploding gasoline. And you're just giving a 4-year-old or 5-year-old that level of responsibility. Like, I think that also kind of does something to a kid, because you go to Little League, you go to baseball, and you got the other players, and you got the teams and the parents, and they're being told what to do. You're told what to do. You're told what to do. The feeling of freedom that a kid has, and I remember it as clear as day, and it changed my life as well, to be given that responsibility and that agency to, like, be in control of something so serious at such a young age. And I think it really does follow on into a kid's life,
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it's funny you brought that up about turning that over to a kid that age. So it's almost like you already knew this story. But my older 2 kids were racing, and my middle one is 2 years older than Thomas. And my wife's like, "Hey, you spend all that time with them other 2 getting them to roll. What are you going to do with Thomas?" He was little. He was like 4. Well, I traveled all the time in sales for my garbage business, right? And I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I saw a motorcycle dealership, and I said, "I'm going to pull in there and buy some spark plugs or whatever, air filters or whatever."
Yeah, just go shopping, grocery store.
So I pull in, and the guy has got a little air-cooled KTM 50, the smallest KTM they were making back then.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey, bud, I'll make you a deal on that one. It's a year old, but it's never been sold." He said, I'll make you a super deal on that. And I'm like, that's just right for Thomas. I go home. We put Thomas on, and I started out teaching him to drive straight ahead. Just drive straight ahead. This is day one, out in the pasture, cow pasture. And so he does that, and my other 2 boys like, he's got it, he can do it. So we had arena cross that weekend.
No way.
Yeah, in these little cattle arenas in Alabama. And so we take him, and had these rubber band starts, right?
Yeah.
So
just
anyway,
fairground style.
Right.
Yep.
And so I'm like, he can do it. Let's put him out there in the little class. Let's put him out there. Well, he does, and he just pins it, gets the whole shot, and runs straight into a concrete wall. He don't know how to turn. So bam, he has this wreck, stops the race, everything. He's okay, He wouldn't ride for a year. None, 0. He would not go anywhere near a motorcycle. I started him way too soon, right? So I learned my lesson. I waited, and then we came back with PWs on the thing. But it's like, my wife would like to kill me. Like, how can you put him at 3 years old or 4 years old, ever how old he on a motorcycle like that? Like, it's like putting him on a bomb, But to your point, but. Anyway, it's crazy.
But yeah, it's a thing that, like, it's a life skill that completely changed my life, and it's something that I was a bit different because my dad grew up racing, so I kind of didn't know anything different. Like, there was always a bike in our garage, and my dad did it more than us for that same reason of, like, my mum wouldn't let us ride, but, like, we always had a bike. We always rode. Our friends all had bikes. It was just kind of always in our life. And you just end up with this crazy skill set of, like, controlling vehicles, the mechanical side of things. And even, like, every kid breaks their arm, every kid breaks their leg. And, you know, I got friends now that they're like my age, like, you know, mid 30-year-old dudes, never even broke a bone.
No.
And it's like they just don't, there's like a level of pain and suffering and trauma and hardship that you are forced to confront at a young age with motorcycles.
Yeah.
And it really does prepare you for a lot in life, you know, even if you never make it as a professional motorcycle rider.
Yeah, you know, and I guess if there is a good side to breaking bones early on and all that, is you don't freak out over small accidents with your kids quite as bad, because no, they'll be okay, right? Because you went through it all. I have people come up to me all the time and they say, you know, your kid he raced those dirt bikes today. Yeah, and he goes, did he ever break a bone? And I'm looking at them like, which one did he not break? Right? You know, they're like, how can you deal with that, right? But you know, because they freak out every time their kid, any little thing happens, right? Because where I don't think Thomas will after going through, or my other kids, because they, you know, like I say, it's a super rough sport.
Well, that's what they say, that like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah.
So if it's a sprained ankle from slipping on a curb, then that's your metric of like, that's gnarly, you know, like that's the hardest thing you've ever had to go through.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So mini dad life, what did you do before you even had kids? What did you do? Like, you were a sports guy, obviously, like, I guess come from Alabama, football, like the normal stick in sports. So sports was always something that was like in your life.
Yeah, I can't remember not being a football fan growing up in Alabama. I grew up 60 miles from Tuscaloosa, where the Crimson Tide and Bear Bryant was winning football games, and my dad would take me once or twice a year to the college game. You know, I can remember that way back. And, you know, in a small one red light town in Alabama, high school football is the king, man.
Yeah, Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, so I grew up doing the team sports and things like that. And you know, like I say, I dabbled in I had a dirt bike. I had an XR75. I mostly rode on the street in front of my house. Yeah. And you know, but I didn't ever dream when I had kids and that my kids would be racing anything. You know, you think a traditional, I think, family like that is thinking, okay, kids gonna go to college. You know, maybe they'll be big enough to play football, or they won't, and do the normal thing. And you know, if you'd have told me I'm gonna have a son that's homeschooled and traveling around the country in a motorhome, you know, I'm like, no way, man. You just don't see that coming.
And so, did you have aspirations to play any professional sports, or like you were like traditional college route, like you kind of did all that through school and you sort of just saw that normal kind of life?
I did. My dream was to be a fighter pilot. And so I went to pilot training in the Air Force, and I was a pilot for a year before they kicked me out.
Really?
Yeah. And my dad was a contractor. He had a contract on an Air Force base when I was a junior in high school or something. He made me work in the summers all the time. So we had a job literally out on the flight line at a pilot training base. And I would see those young guys go get in that jet and take off and fly it, you know, and light the afterburners. And I'm like, dude, that's what I want to do. Yeah, there's nothing bad about that. I mean, everybody on base is saluting them, wishing they had their job. Every chick that walks by is like, man, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the top.
Yeah. So, you know, so that was my aspiration. And then so that's what kept me in college, or I would have quit, right? Because I ain't very smart. And it just drove me to get this pilot slot, right? To go make it into the Air Force. So when they kicked me out of the pilot training,
what'd you get kicked out for?
It's kind of a long story, but basically, it's about an 11-month program, and in month 9, I was like top of the class, doing great, and I had a couple of bad days flying, and they got rid of 10 of us all in one day.
No.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we need to get rid of some people, right? And they flunked a check ride. Man, they come in there, and you know, it was a tough. It was cutthroat, right? And a lot of it has to do with their numbers. Like, if the big generals up there say we got too many pilots coming through, we don't need as many pilots.
The year before, it might have been completely different
Yeah,
story.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I believe things don't happen to you; they happen for you.
Yeah.
And I still have pilot training reunions with my class that was there. They still consider me one of them. We still have a class reunion all the time. And I look at it, and while I love what they did and went on to do, some of them went on to just do amazing things, and I'm really proud of them. I'm so glad I didn't do that. Right, looking back on it, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have had the life I've got if I had stayed in and done that properly.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? So I don't think things happen to you like that. But what it did is I considered that a failure in my life.
I was going to say
right?
that was probably a pretty massive gut check.
I had no
early on in
backup
your
plan,
life.
man.
Yeah.
No backup plan. And so when I got my next job, which was in sales, I remember that feeling of failure every day.
Yeah.
And it would drive me. I get up at 6:00 in the morning, drink a big cup of coffee while I made notes of who I'm going to call that day. I was in sales.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a numbers game. The more you call, the more you the more you
Just,
sell. Right?
more at bat.
Yeah. And so I read all these books on all that, and I was just obsessed because I'm like, I ain't going to fail again.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing. I like to say success breeds failure and failure breeds success often, right? And that's not what a lot of motivational speakers will tell you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you the more you win, the more you'll win. But what I have observed in life, and especially in motocross, is that sometimes when you succeed, you get fat, dumb, and happy. You get complacent, and you get this feeling of, whew, I made it. So if you want me to tie that to motocross and amateur motocross, because we see it so much, is so a kid comes up on PW50s, his dad gets into it just like I did, the pressure's on, he gets sponsors, he's getting free motorcycles by the time he's 8, 9, 10, and the whole goal is to make it to Supercross, get a contract with Pro Circuit or KTM or whoever, right? And the pressure's just constantly on. The family, mortgages the house or whatever they got to do to buy the motor home.
Lives in a trailer.
You know the game.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
And so they do all that, and all this pressure is on that kid. I mean, it's like really tough pressure a lot of times, right? And so they finally make it. They get a contract, and they do pretty good. They buy their own house. They marry the monster girl. Life is good. And it's like, whew, I made it.
How many biographies did you just write just then?
So you understand what I'm saying? Okay, you're picking up what I'm putting down, right? All right. So so I see that often.
Yeah.
Right. And so that failure, to go back to me getting kicked out of the Air Force for bad flying, that feeling is what drove me to not fail again, right? Yeah. And sure, I failed again lots of times, but it's that feeling, right? And so that failure bred success for me, and that work ethic, right? And I think that I see that often, but especially in motocross, we talk about it at Monster sometimes, is we're almost too good to the amateur programs, right? They because the amateurs a lot of times make more than the average pro. The top amateur guy is sometimes he makes more than some of the pros because unless you're on a factory ride, I mean, the gig.
Yeah.
And
the incentive just kind of like isn't there, or it breeds like a bit of a false sense of security as to how easy that your life is going to be.
It does. And I think, like I said, they've had so much pressure on them, and then when they finally get there, and then they, maybe they get married or whatever, they got a house and everything, and they get tired of Dad saying, "You're not working hard enough, son." He's like, "You know what, Dad?
Yeah, you're done.
You're done." And so, I mean, like I say, we've all seen that in the sport, but a lot of them though have a really racer's heart, and I think when they have a bad season or they find themselves complacent or whatever, they're just wired different.
Yeah,
they're wired to to make that comeback. Look at Cooper Webb.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Right, Cooper's one of my favorite people. All right, so when my son,
I could see you and Coop getting along.
oh yeah, when Thomas won the PW class, Cooper had won it the year before.
Huh.
And so we knew them well. I won't say we were big friends back then because we were Moto Dad competitors and stuff. But every other year, he was a year older than Thomas. So every other year, he was our competitor, and every other year he was in the class ahead of us.
Yep.
So every other year, me and Bobby were buddies. And it was so funny because he was real passionate about it too, and they were great competitors. But Cooper and Thomas are friends, and I talked to Cooper from time to time, even when he was racing for KTM. Because it's like they're.
You
we
go
grew
so
up with
far
them.
back, yeah.
Yeah, we grew up with them. Time they were 4, you know them. But back to the point we were making about, Cooper's one of those rare guys.
Very rare.
Yeah, that it's in his DNA to win, and he knows when to turn it on. He knows, and
he'll win in spite of maybe lack of speed, lack of physical gifts, lack of perfect preparation. Like, he's a guy that can win from a place of want as opposed to a place of surplus. Like you get some guys that have speed on tap and they have the perfect preparation and, everything's laid like they should win. Cooper is a guy that shouldn't win on paper when you look at some of the stats and physical attributes of the competitors, but he is one of the rare guys that finds a way to beat those guys that other people will say are better, and without perfect preparation.
Yeah, well, he's a smart rider for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed about Cooper over the years is when he saw that he could win, when he saw the window,
when the door was open,
when that door was cracked, you better get out of the way. Cooper's going to step through it. And when he smells that, you ain't going to beat him. He'll do whatever it takes, right? He's wired to do that. And, other years when, Eli or whoever was on fire and, and you notice he it looks to me like, not that he held back, but he just paced himself, right?
Yeah, he knows where he's at.
He knows where he's at. But when he sees that opportunity, and when he should win, he wins.
Yeah.
And, so I'm a big fan of Cooper, from a sports psychology standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, he's one of the greats. And it's cool. I spoke to him in the press conference after Salt Lake. And just to say the words out loud to him and say, you're a 3-time Supercross champion. Chad Reed has 2. James Stewart has 2. Eli Tomac has 2.
I know.
You're a 3-time champ.
It's
that
huge.
There, it's like gives me goosebumps, but it's like, hey, bro, you never have to race a dirt bike again at 29, and you're in the Hall of Fame. Crazy, dude.
Crazy.
And his first championship was in 2019.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It is. It's really remarkable, and really proud for Cooper. He's a good kid.
And, to your point that you were making earlier, he spent his whole life essentially getting beat by Cincerello. So like he really had to learn how to fail, and how to come up short. And you are right. Like, you do end up learning a lot more from your failures in life. And I think you do have to just be completely open and okay with failing, because that's where the real learning is. If you get something right, it's just like the box is ticked and just try and do it again. But there's not a lot that does come from that. Some belief and some confidence and, those things apply. But if you want real nitty-gritty details of how you can get better at life, you should actively try and fail with some safeguards in place to where, you're not going to lose your house. It's not an all-in bet that you're making where if you fail, it's over. You need to set up these safe failures and just make them over and over and over. It's just iterating and iterating, and that's when you really do get the knowledge.
Yeah, no, I think that's the only way we really learn hard things in life is through failure, right? And like I say, failure breeds success, and because you learn, you learn from it, and it gives you the motivation. And that's definitely true for motocrossers.
Yeah,
for sure. You know that we have a saying called "Be wired, not inspired." Inspiration's fleeting, but if it's in your DNA, you do something. You're wired, and it's better to be wired. You know, and a guy that always comes to my mind in motocross that was truly wired is Ricky Carmichael.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was wired to win every single race, every single moto. He was just wired that way.
Relentless.
Yeah. It didn't matter if he was happy, sad. Didn't matter if he'd had a good week, a bad week.
The bike was good. The bike wasn't good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he takes the cake on that one. And a lot of them were. It's not just Ricky. A lot of the great ones were. I mean, but
he is probably the example of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I just think so.
So did sales come naturally to you, do you think? Or is it something that you just put in a lot of work and a lot of time?
I think it came out of, I got to pay the bills, you know. I got to go. Like I said, I come out of the Air Force where it didn't end the way I wanted to, plan B, and I'm on commission. If I'm going to live the life I wanted to live and give my wife and future family the life they wanted to be, man, I had to do it. So I read some books, and it says, sales is a numbers game, just like a batting average. So, if you've got to call 20 people to make one sale, do the math on how much money you want to make. If the average sale, pays $100 and you want to make $500, you got to have 5 sales in a day. You got to make 1,000 calls in a day to make your money, right? So
you're making a lot of sense.
Yeah. Sales is really, everybody thinks it's about talent.
Yep.
Sales is about doing what it takes to do it, and
how many no's do you have to get through to get a yes?
Yeah, it's a numbers game, and you got to help your batting average. You get better at it, then you don't have to go through so many. You get more yeses, right? But it's I don't know. People say it came natural to me, but I don't know that it did, man. Rejection. It's most people, the average person, can't take the rejection over and over. They don't want to make the calls anymore because I ain't going to call that guy. He ain't going to want to do it. Well, you'll find reasons why I'm not going to make that call, because you'll say, he's just like that other guy, same business, and they didn't do anything, so he won't. You come up with reasons why not to make the call, but you got to make the call, right? And it's so that was just my thing in sales, but all of this stuff, it all goes back to kind of some basic stuff in life. It's about succeeding. The things that makes people succeed in motocross, like Cooper Webb, I believe Cooper Webb would have succeeded at
anything,
whatever he went into, because he don't like to lose, and he's willing to pay the price to win. Everybody wants to win. Shit. Well, everybody lines up on the gate, wants to win, but a lot of them are not willing to do what you have to do to win.
Mm-hmm.
And Cooper's one of those, and a lot of others, not just Cooper, man. A lot of them are willing to do what it takes to win. And the difference, when you got all those out there that are willing to do it at that level, it's the difference in him and 5 more are just really close, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that come to mind. One is, one of my favorite books is called Atomic Habits, and the author basically talks about, he basically says what you just said, where it's like, okay, you've got 8 guys on the start line at an Olympic 100-meter final. You think that all 8 of those guys don't have the exact same goal?
Yeah.
So the goal is pretty well useless.
Yeah.
At the top of the pops. And what is important is the processes that each of those guys followed in preparation for that moment. And this book basically just says exactly that. And it's just like, it's all about what you do day to day to day to day to day to get on that start line. It's all well and good with the goal. It might start with the goal. That might be the thing that you need initially to like get the wheels turning. But the goal ain't worth shit if you don't follow the process. And I just went to Star the other week. I've known Coop since he was 14.
Mm-hmm.
We're friends. He didn't fucking talk to me for 2 days. Just looked straight past me. And when his riding was done on Wednesday, so then he flew Thursday for press. So when his work was done,
Yeah.
He's like, what up, Jace? How are you, man? It's been good to have you around all week. And I'm just like, motherfucker, you didn't talk to me.
He was focused, man.
But he was locked in. And so I saw that for 2 days. Their season is 5 months since it started. And then the 2 months before, to stay that locked in and to stay that focused on your goal, to be that committed to the process, that's what you're saying is that's the thing that most people don't have. And I think that success in anything can sometimes seem like it requires a secret or this talent, but it's just a real crazy obsessive focus towards achieving the goal that you have in mind and doing what it takes on a daily basis to get there, whether it's sales, whether it's motocross, whether it's whatever.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I have a good friend that's a world famous sports psychologist, and he's works with Nick Saban at Alabama. He's won 8 championships with him. Yeah. He's works with Jalen Hurts now. He's got 33 championship rings over, whether it be Super Bowls or national championships with athletes and teams. So he's one of the best of the best, right? And to that point about the process, he tells it like this: once you have to sit down at the beginning and make a goal, and then lay out what's it going to take, what nitty-gritty goals do you have that you do every day that will yield that, and believe in that process. And then you have to do that process. You have to be wired to do that process every day and believe in it. And he calls it keep chopping wood. So if you had to envision a big tree out there and you've got an axe, and your process is, I'm going to keep hitting that thing till it falls, and I'm going to sharpen my axe every day or every 15 minutes, whatever your process is, I'm going to do that. And if I keep hitting that thing, I don't know what stroke of the axe is going to make it fall. Yeah. I don't know which swing of the axe is going to make it fall, but I know if I keep hitting it, it is going to fall. I just don't know when. So, so I like to tell our athletes all the time, man, just keep chopping wood. Keep chopping wood. Believe in your process. It'll fall. Keep chopping wood. And, things like that. But I like things like that.
That's cool. That's so cool. So you're doing the sales gig, and then the boys are racing, and then you have this chance meeting, and now you're an agent to an off-road truck guy that's just signed a Monster Energy deal.
Yeah, it gets really crazy after that.
After failing your check ride and completely diverting the course of your life and many others.
Yeah, so life's good, okay? I'm going around with Johnny Greaves to the truck races. I'm making 20% off the top. Things are good. I start me a little business on the side, helping people sell their business. I'm living back in Alabama in the hometown, raising the kids. And then I take that back. Yeah. I moved back from Wisconsin to Alabama, and kids are racing, going around. Life's good. The series Johnny was racing in was called Core.
Yeah.
I know a lot of listeners will remember this. And a guy owned that series that was a real estate guru, and he's a huge real estate owner. And anyway, he was paying for network television live. He wanted it to be like NASCAR. The sponsors were all jumping in because it was a good value. You got a guy paying for network TV. You're getting a good deal to sponsor these trucks, and you're getting big exposure. It was great for the sponsors. It was great for the drivers. Life was good until the real estate bubble burst in 2007 and 8.
Yeah.
He comes in and says, real estate market's not doing well. I'm out on the racing, boys. He pulls the rug out from under everybody. So here's it. So envision this. You got all of these big-time, lifelong racers like Johnny and his competitors. They've got the sponsors of a lifetime, different sponsors from all over. Big endemic sponsors are sponsoring the series. Life's good, and we got nowhere to race. So he calls me and says, get your ass to California. He had moved to Temecula from Wisconsin, and he says, get out here. So we got a problem. I'm like, what? He says, no series to race, man. He pulled the plug. We got nowhere to race, and we don't know what to do. The drivers are meeting. So I get on a plane, fly out there. And long story short, Ricky Johnson, who I had never met before that, other than maybe just say hey in the pits or something at an off-road race. He was racing for Red Bull off-road trucks.
Yep.
Great driver. And so we're all sitting around trying to figure out what to do. And RJ's like, well, I've always wanted to start a series. I want to call it the Ricky Johnson Off-Road Grand Prix. And driver's like, well, that's one option. Anybody else got any ideas, And a few other people popped up. And I go home that night with Johnny and them scratching my head, and I'm like, well, look, we got to get behind a series. If all you drivers will stick together, we keep the sponsors together, we can move it over to another promoter, go down that road. And there was a guy that wasn't there. His name was Mike Jenkins, who owned Traxxas RC cars.
Yep.
And he loved to race, and he would come race in the series and stuff. So I called him, and I said, hey, Mike, you should come to California and help your other drivers out. They don't really know what to do yet, and you're a smart guy. You could really help them. Why don't you come out here and spend a day or two? He goes, I don't really want to come out there, but I tell you what. He says, what's their idea? I said, well, Ricky Johnson's wanting to put on a race series, but I don't know if we'll ever pull it together. He says, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, if you'll own it, I'll wire you $1 million right now. He says, the only way I'm going to do it is if you own 50% of it, because I don't know Ricky very well, but I know you. And he says, he can own half, you own half. I'll wire the money. Otherwise, and you call it the Traxxas Off-Road Championship, Torque. So, hey, Johnny, Jenkins says he'll send us $1 million, start a series. He's like, what are you waiting on? I got to have somewhere to race, bud. If not, me and you both side will work.
That's insane.
Yeah, so I start a series. I didn't know anything about TV, man. I didn't know anything about TV. So we go and we meet with the sponsors. The sponsors say, you got to have minimum of 8 races.
Yeah, dude, that's like the glory days.
There you go, man. I know every one of them guys. There's my guy right over at Johnny Greaves Impact Racing.
No way.
Anyway, so see, Traxxas, Jerky Johnson winning the off-road.
Yeah,
So Ricky's my partner. He's a Red Bull guy. Johnny was my athlete. He's a monster guy. I say, Johnny, if I'm running the series, I can't represent you. It'll be a big conflict, and it won't work. He goes, well, then you're fired. And so I start, me and Ricky get together. That I call up Ricky, and he goes, hell yeah, man, I'm in. Come on over. Now, I didn't know Ricky really at all, other than, I knew who he was. I mean, I didn't know him. And he says, come over to my house in Orange County. And he says, let's start working it out, man. And so I'm like, okay. So I get my rental car from Johnny's, drive to Orange County, go to Ricky's, sleep on their couch for 4 days. Yeah, just and figuring this shit out, man. And we launched this series. And long story short, I could talk all day about it, but we launched this thing, and Red Bull, because Ricky had the association with Red Bull, they said, we'll take half the races, but we're not going to take them all. We're just going to take half. We want this race. First half of the season, basically.
Yep.
And the sponsors have said you have to have major TV, like network TV, not cable TV, network TV. You have to have a few live races, and you have to race races on both coasts. You can't just say, I want to do a California series.
Yeah.
So we agreed to anything, right? We didn't have a choice. So, we'll do that. Well, I don't know anything about TV. RJ really didn't. He knew a few people, So we made a few phone calls. And so we said, we don't have enough money. This TV's going to cost too much because we got to do time buys.
What was it back then?
Back then we were paying $350,000 for the trailer to come. And then we had to pay a producer and all these people to produce it. And the time buy for the space was $350,000. That's what it was. The time buy was $350,000. Then we had to pay for production on top of that. And I didn't forget what we paid a week for production in the truck.
So that's like millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so we're like, how are we going to come up with this? And we had some sponsors, kind of smaller ones that added up and some other good ones. But we needed more. We needed a lot more. I was doing the math, and I'm like,
right after the financial crisis too.
Yeah. The real estate market was in the tank. So we get Red Bull. They say, we'll take half the races. Rockstar called me up. Kelso at Rockstar. I like Kelso, man. He's awesome. And he calls me up, and he says, I want Crandon. Well, I put him off because I knew I was going to go try to sell Monster for the other half of the races, and I knew they might want Crandon. So I'm like, I don't know, Mike, I'll get you a race, or how much you got to spend? I'm got no working to do. He's like, don't you screw me. Covington, don't you screw me. All right. And I'm like, hey, I'm in a tide here. Hey, hang on. Well, I go to Monster and
I know your game now. Like, I know how you're doing all these deals. I love it, dude.
So anyway, I call up, there was a guy at Monster running doing what Nixon does, right, over Motorsports, or Dave Gallen does.
Yeah.
So I call them up. It wasn't them. It was their predecessor. Call them up, and I say, hey, we're doing this off-road championship because I know all about it, man. You're going to fail. You ain't got a chance in hell, man. Ain't no way you're getting any monster money. You're out, man. And I'm like, hang up. And I said, Ricky, he was an asshole. I said, I'm going to call Mark Hall because I met him through representing Johnny, right? I knew him and Rodney and all of them because representing Johnny. Yeah. So I call up Mark and I say, hey, man, me and Ricky's putting together this series. He goes, I'll meet y'all for a drink at the Canners. He says, I want to hear about it. So Mark gets off from work. We meet him for dinner, have a few glasses of wine. He's like, I'm so jealous. I want to own it. I want to be y'all's partner. Now, Mark Hall's got a few $100 million at least, right? I mean, he's not a broke guy.
Yeah,
I'm like,
big fish.
Yeah. I'm like, you can be our partner. Absolutely, Mark, you can be our partner. He goes, we'll get Monster to sponsor it. And I'm like, that's a problem. I said, that's going to be a conflict of interest. You're on the board. You're president of Monster. You can't sponsor your own series. I don't think that'll work, man. He's like, you're probably right. Well, I tried. I'm like, well, what if Monster bought it? What if you guys just bought the series and owned it? Then you do whatever you want. He goes, I'll go pitch it. So he said, come to the office. Make us a presentation. So me and RJ's like, what are we going to do now? Okay. I'm sleeping on his couch, bro.
Just scheming.
Oh, yeah.
This is awesome.
Oh, yeah. And you got to remember, I'm from Alabama, man. And all of a sudden now I'm sleeping on Ricky Johnson's couch with all Ricky Johnson's Southern California friends and, two hip Ricky Johnson, right? I love Ricky, man. He's so fucking awesome. And anyway, we're trying to figure this thing out. And so
have you already signed a deal with Red Bull at this point?
Yeah, we signed a deal with them like that.
Huh.
So they got half the races as a sponsor.
So there's a bit of an issue there to work around.
Big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus my partner's a Red Bull guy.
Yeah.
So I go to, Mark Hall says, come make a presentation. I go in there and I say, hey, look, guys, first year we're going to lose, I don't know, a few $1 million. But the second year, we should get more sponsors on board, get more TV time sold, should break even. Third year, we should show a profit. And I mean, it's really simple, man. It was straight out of my ass, okay? and so anyway, they look around, and it was the two founders of the company and another guy that's a CFO that's really a good, hard-nosed business guy, and they were just looking at me like, and Mark Hall. And so we go back, and we were just about to throw in the towel and give up because we couldn't get them to give us an answer. And then the phone rings, and it's Mark, and he goes, well, guys, he says, take all your financials and your paperwork and your accounting and throw them into a shoebox and bring them up to Monster to a guy named Tom Kelly on the second floor and throw them at him and walk out, and you guys go put on the best damn series in the world. So we're going to give you and Ricky a percentage of it, ownership. If it makes it, you guys are going to get rich too. And he says, we're going racing, boys. So we moved in their office downstairs in sports marketing.
No way.
Gave me and Ricky a big office, and and we were in there, and we hired some employees to help us put on the races, anyway, we were running that race series out of Monsters thing, and Red Bull had half the races. Right?
No way.
Yeah. And we got along surprisingly well, but some of the craziest times though was the management at Monster really keeps up with what's going on. They run it very.
It's pretty hands-on, eh?
Oh, yeah, very hands-on, right?
Even still today.
Even today. And they wanted to know everything going on all the time. So they just walk up, the CEO, billionaire, he's like, just come to my office anytime, walk in, wait in line, whatever, no appointments or anything like that. So, man, half the day I was up there in his office like, okay, we can do this, we do that, we can do this, talking it all out with him. He was all into it. The other partner was too. And, anyway, long story short, we get ready to get going, and Lucas Oil decides that they're going to launch a competing series.
Yeah.
So life was really lining up good till that happened. And, they came in to play hard. So they started buying teams and putting on their series, and we had a promoter war, right? Just like Hart IRL, which is never good. Promoter wars are a lose-lose.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And we couldn't work it out, so we just kind of had competing series for a year. And because of that, I lost some really good drivers and some sponsors that went that way, and some of them came our way, put on our races. We had our TV paid for it. And so at the end of the year, I lost way more than what I told them in that meeting I was going to lose. And I went to them and said, I think you guys are really good at selling drinks and you're brilliant business guys, but maybe the structure's not cut out good to run a race series. Why don't we just, this year, we cut it down to a 3-race Triple Crown, get our feet on solid ground, and figure out what to do after that. Maybe sell it to Lucas Oil or merge, because it was really, we had no grudge against nobody, right? It wasn't like, we had no ego in the game.
Yeah, I was going
right?
to say, that sounds like there's no ego involved.
Nah,
in that.
on the it really wasn't on our side. I don't know about theirs, but on ours, it was just, I was running a series for Monster and my partners, right?
Yeah.
And so,
it came out of the series being pulled. It wasn't like this was a vision you had to, like, you kind of wound up trying to save a bunch of these drivers. And so if that was getting done,
yeah,
no matter how it was getting done, all good.
Yeah. So anyway, we tell the sponsors, who were very demanding. Oh, man, you wouldn't believe. So anyway, we tell them we're going to do 3 races, but we're going to put up, I don't know, maybe it was going to do $1 million prize for a winner if you won all 3 or something crazy like Monster would do. And they at first like, well, okay. They called me back the next day and said, that's just unacceptable. We need 8 or 10 races. How about USAC was our sanctioning body? How about USAC buys the series from Monster and we take it and run it? And so I go up and I talk to the boss. I'm like, hey, these guys want to buy the series. He says, give it to them. And says, give them $250,000 to be the title sponsor for the first year to help them out, help them get them started. And said, we'll support it. We'll send drivers and we'll be the title sponsor. Just give it to them. Put the shoebox back together, throw it at them. And so that's what we did. So when go back and tell Ricky, well, it's been a good run, man. We've got lifelong friends now. It's been a good run, and Ricky can go back to being a driver and a Red Bull guy and doing what he does. I go back to Alabama and, start my business, go back to doing Johnny's stuff. And, I have a few freestyle guys and other stuff, too, I picked up along the way. So I'm like, that's all good. So I'm walking through the hallway.
That's so cool.
That's crazy. So I'm packing my shit up, and walking through the hall, and I see one of the owners, and I say, hey, man, it's been great. And he says, what are you going to do now? I said, well, I'm going to go back to Alabama and start my business back up. But I said, man, I just want to thank you because this has been a really cool, fun time, man. This has been a great year. I enjoyed every minute of it. Next time I'm out here in California, I'm going to come by your house and have a beer and laugh about this, right? And he goes, well, I don't want you to leave. And he says, why don't you just go? I said, what do you want me to do? He says, go down in sports marketing and just make yourself useful. And I'm like, well, them guys in sports marketing ain't going to want me to come down there and make myself useful, right? Because I got a line to the top and, politically, structure-wise, it's kind of wasn't a popular thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's what the guy wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, I'll stay. Yeah, he said, I'll just keep paying you what we're paying you in the racing thing. Just keep. I said, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, I don't really care. He says, we went through millions of dollars worth of invoices together, and you didn't steal a dime from me. I know, because I was trying to catch you stealing a dime from me. And he said, I need somebody like that. I said, just go down there. We'll figure it out. So that's how I got hired as an employee of Monster. I had no job, no.
That is insane, dude. That's like, I hope this isn't offensive, but that's like the most Forrest Gump, like, motorsport corporate story of all time. Like, just a boy from Alabama just kind of gets randomly into this and randomly into that and randomly into this, and then it's like, hey, bro, you're the guy. We kind of need you. That's so cool. That's such a crazy cool way to get involved with one of the most influential companies in America.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm lucky. I'm extremely fortunate and lucky. Been
in
blessed.
A way.
Yeah.
Some ways luck, some ways you just kind of nailed it.
Well, again, I go back to failures breeding success, right? Out of failure sometimes comes championships, right?
Yeah.
And so there again, there's a failure of that race series didn't go the way we planned for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And out of that, it's turned out to be a really good thing. And so that's why when I see people fail, I'm like, this could be a good thing. And so it's
and once you go through that once, right? Like, I feel like once you have that experience in your life, and this is why I think failing at a young age is very important, because once you can kind of see something good on the other side of a failure, you can kind of look through that lens for the rest of your life.
That's right. You're not afraid to anymore.
Nah.
You're not afraid to fail anymore, right? Because you don't want to fail because you remember that feeling, but on the other hand, you know that whatever, you're going to be okay. Yeah. Right, because you are. Yeah, you
got proof.
You got proof. Most people, I've read this somewhere. I didn't make it up. I do make up a lot of bullshit. But anyway.
I do that for a living.
Yeah. So. but anyway, what I was going to say is most people spend 80% of their time worrying about shit that never happens.
Yeah.
Right? The shit you worry about in the middle of the night and stuff like that, it hardly ever happens what you were worried about. Right? And failure is like one of those. Now, I ain't saying everybody should go out and fail. I don't mean that,
but failures are going to inevitably happen in your life, and if you can instantly look at it through a specific lens, like from my own life, last August, our warehouse burned down in Australia, so I just left here. I'd taken all my cameras, all my computers, all my hard drives, and I was like, all right, I'm in Australia for a couple months. I'm just going to get cracking back at work. 4 o'clock in the morning, fucking thing went up in flames. Worst day of my life. And I literally was watching the fucking thing burn down in front of my eyes. Just a huge warehouse fire. And I looked at my wife and I was like, pack your shit. We're out.
Yeah. Well, so you wouldn't be here right now if that fire hadn't happened.
Well, and it's just like it just was one of those things where I've failed enough in my life and I'd had enough shitty things happen that were like reasons to stop, and I didn't. And this was just another one of those things. And it was like it was like a lesson in how conditioned I've become, because that was literally just the default. I didn't have to talk myself into that. I didn't have like this. It was literally just like, pack your shit, we're going back to America.
You're wired, not inspired.
And it's like, and I just think that it's because of, inevitably in life you do fail so often that, you can just kind of like get to that point. And it's pretty much, that sounds like where you're at, where it's like to other people on the outside, it could look at this failure. You've lost this business, you lost this opportunity. I have to go back to Alabama, and you're just like, it'll work itself out. There's a lens that you can look through to your failures. In 2022, Eli Tomac made the switch to Yamaha and found instant success on their class-leading YZ450F. Eli Tomac had 3 reasons for making the switch. He wanted power, and the Yamaha has the strongest and most tunable motor in the class. He wanted KYB suspension, and the YZ450F comes stock with his preferred KYB system. And finally, he wanted a cable clutch. Yamaha took the championship-winning YZ450F and made it even better. More powerful, lighter, slimmer, with enhanced overall stability and more agility than ever before. The 2025 YZ450F is available now in both Yamaha Blue, or to really look like Eli Tomac, it's also available in the Monster Energy edition. The pinnacle of off-road 4-stroke performance wrapped in iconic Yamaha racing livery. Head to YamahaMotorsports.com or into your local dealer now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point and a good way to look at it. It's and I believe in second chances because of that. Like, so at Monster, for instance, we have athletes that do a lot of crazy stuff and screw up sometimes, right? Not all the time, but sometimes.
Sometimes it happens.
Sometimes it happens,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's life. It's life.
People fuck up, right? and so one thing, and I'm not taking credit for it, it's really the people that founded Monster. The Mark Halls and Hilton Schlossberg and Rodney Sachs. They believe in second chances. Now, they don't put it in those words and say, hey, Mitch, I believe in second chances. No, but they do.
Their actions show that.
Yes. So over time, when we have athletes that really step in it and really screw up, and all their other sponsors leave them or write them letters and quit paying them and everything else, we almost always stand behind them. You know, Tiger Woods. You know, not long after we signed Tiger Woods, he took some sleeping pills or something, and they backfired, and he gets up in the middle of the night and goes for a drive around down the street in his fancy car and runs off the side of the road and gets pulled over, and his mugshot's on the cover of USA Today, right? I mean,
so that was as highly publicized as it gets.
Yes, that's highly publicized. You know, our phone's ringing off the hook. You know, we got to get rid of Tiger Woods, and fans are writing in, consumers writing in on the hotline and calling in. You know, everybody's freaking out. And my boss, Rodney Sachs, the CEO, was not a huge fan of signing Tiger to start with, because he's a golfer and we're not into golf. We signed him because he's one of the greatest athletes in the world. He'd be, you know, if it ain't for kind of other reasons. But he wasn't a big fan of the deal. So when this happened, I'm like, oh no, Rodney wants to talk to me. He's going to say, get rid of Tiger, right? He's going to say, and so I was going to try to talk him out of it, nonetheless. But I went in there to do that. But he looks up at me and I said, now, Rodney, I said, we're going to have to stick with him here. It's really not going to look good if we drop him here. He goes, drop him? You think I would drop him? Are you lost your mind? We ain't dropping him now. No way. He says, we got to stand behind our guy. He says, we're standing behind him. You call him up. You tell him we're here to help. I mean, you know, it's good. Well, a lot of them did drop him. And so roll the camera forward. 2019, the year before, 2018, he was lying flat on his back with a massive back fusion. Doctor told him, said, you'll either be able to get up and play again, or you'll never play again in your life. It'll either work or it won't, and you'll never be what you were, because it's a massive thing. He comes back in 2019 and wins the Masters. All right, so I get chills looking at that one.
Same, dude.
My greatest sports moments in my career, right? And so, and
Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be standing right there. And
you were standing there when he won.
I was, and
wow.
Yeah, so I was on the 18th green right there, looking on him there. But anyway, but they asked him. A big time reporter asked him, says the next day, hey, I bet since you've made this massive comeback, a lot of your sponsors will come back. How much increase in sponsor revenue do you think you'll get by winning this Masters and making your comeback complete? He said, I'm not going to get a single one. I'm not answering the phone. I got 3 people that stuck with me, Monster Energy, Rolex, and Nike. Nobody else needs to call. They stood behind me when nobody else did. I'm not looking for sponsors. And to make it even better, is he's got the toughest agent in the world, Mark Steinberg. And I used to dread negotiating with this guy. He was good, all right? He was rough, all right? And I called him to renew the deal, and I'm expecting, okay.
Double the money.
Yeah, because I bought low, right? He just got hit with a golf club by his first wife, right? I bought low, right? So I'm like, oh, here it comes, man. He's going to stick it to me there, man. Here it comes. Picked up the phone. I said, you know, where do you want to start on this thing, Mark? And he said, I just got off the phone with Tiger. Tiger said to take whatever you offer. I'm not negotiating with you. Just tell us what you want to pay. He wants to be with you the rest of your life. And because we stuck with him. And I could tell you stories about 5 other athletes that's even worse than that. But that sticking with people when they fail is important. It's you know, it's something I'm proud of Monster, not myself. I'm about the people that.
Yeah, there's got to be a culture.
It's the culture.
Of that.
Yeah, it's the culture, you know.
Yeah.
And but it's back. Everybody loves a redemption story too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like we don't have a payoff on this thing if it works. Some of them, they don't all come back and win the Masters, but everybody in America loves a redemption story. So, you know, it's, again, we're talking about failures and comebacks.
Yeah. So you were part of putting together the deal with Tiger?
It's a crazy story, of course.
Let's go.
So one day I'm sitting in my office and we had just done a NASCAR deal, and my contact in Charlotte calls me from an agent guy in Charlotte calls me and says, hey, Mitch, I need you to do me a favor. I got a good friend that's in California today. He wants to come by and pitch you something. Can you give him 10 minutes? I'm like, man, I am swamped. I'm thinking they're going to come pitch me some stupid shit, right? You know? And I'm like, he goes, well, you know, do me a favor. Come on, man. See the guy. And I'm like, okay, send him by. But I'm really swamped, but send him by. So this well-dressed guy in a tie comes in my office and says, he pitched me. You won't believe, you're going to love this. What he pitched me that day was a totally new concept called Barstool Sports. Okay? I didn't know what it was. He barely did. And what he pitched me is not what it is today, but it was a concept called Barstool Sports. And they had hired this agency to sell it. And so he was pitching it to Monster. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, man. That's all good, you know. Look at my watch. Yeah, it's time to go. And he gets up to leave and he hands me a postcard-sized business card like this big. And on there, he had all their athletes. He said, we're a small boutique firm with some high-end athletes. If you ever have an interest in any of the athletes, call me. You've been real nice. Thanks for seeing me. And I look on there, and it's got Archie Manning, Eli Manning, Jim Nance, top of the top.
Yeah.
And right in the middle was Tiger Woods. And I said, whoa, you're Tiger Woods' agent? I'm a Tiger Woods fan, right? So he says, my partner in the business. I can't talk to you about Tiger, but he can. Do you have an interest? And I said, well, I don't know. I'd like to talk to him. You never know, right? So I said, hang on. Stay right here. I go upstairs to see Mark Hall. Back then, I reported to Mark. Mark's crazy. I love him to death. Some of my best friends. Crazy as hell, right? So I go up there, and I'm like, it's like the mad professor, right? And so I go up there, and I go, Mark, I got Tiger Woods' agent downstairs. And I said, you ever thought about doing anything with Tiger Woods? He's like, oh, hell yeah. Send him up. Let's talk to him. I said, what do you want to do with him? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Send him up. So I go get the guy. I said, my guy wants to meet you, right? So he goes up, and Mark says, I want to do a drink with Tiger Woods. I want it to be a Tiger Woods drink. You think he's interested? He said, don't talk to me about Tiger. Mark Steinberg will kill me, but I'll get him on the phone. So we get Steinberg on the phone. He comes on the phone. He goes, I don't know you people. I don't know if you're serious. Don't waste my time, blah, blah, blah. He's like hardball, man, right out of the gate. And we're like, yeah, we're interested. And he said, we'd like to do a drink with Tiger. And so he says, well, I'll talk to him. I'll get back to you. So he calls us right back and says, yeah, he might be interested. Well, I didn't know it, but they needed a bag sponsor about that time because the one they had quit paying them. And so they needed a bag sponsor.
Yep.
And so
I remember waking up in the morning. I'm a pretty big golf fan. I remember waking up in the morning one day and like the first 7 images on my news feed was a Monster Energy golf bag with Tiger Woods the morning that that deal dropped, dude. It was everywhere.
Yeah, it was good. And but it was another one of these stories where me and Mark go down to see the big boss, and the big boss is like, he don't know anything about golf. I mean, he's a South African gentleman who's never played a round of golf in his life. And he's like, over my dead body, am I going to sponsor a golfer for Monster? No, get out.
Because it's so different. It's built on adrenaline and that high-speed action sports. Like, that was the heritage of the brand.
Yes, and it still is. And so I said, look, we're not getting into golf. We're getting into the greatest athletes in the world, and Tiger Woods is a great one, arguably one of the top 3 greatest athletes of all time. And he's like, he's not that big. Lewis Hamilton and Valentino Rossi and Ricky Carmichael, they're way bigger than this guy. And I'm like, Rodney, no, right? So anyway, he comes around, but we do the deal, and but that where we really won Rodney over was like 5 years later. Tiger wins the Zozo Open in Japan, and Rodney was on a trip to Japan, and a business trip. And while he was over there, it was on every TV in Japan, Tiger Woods winning their tournament in Japan. And with the Monster Energy bag, and it blew up. And everywhere he went, they were talking about it. So he comes back. This is classic. He comes back, and he calls a meeting.
And it tied the record for the most wins on tour as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was huge. And but anyway, we go, and Rodney calls us all in.
He can't get away from his own brand on a business trip.
Yeah. And he calls us all in, and he goes, I like to imitate right here. He's South African, He's like, we're not doing a very good job of using Tiger Woods. Do you realize, people, that we have one of the biggest athletes in history, and we're not even using him very much? And, I want to see some action on Tiger Woods because I don't know if you guys realize how big an athlete he really is. We're all sitting there like, you got to laugh, right?
Unreal.
Yeah, you got to laugh. But anyway, we did. We're still with him. But yeah, that was... And he's still with us today. So
that is so wild. That's such a cool thing to be a part of, because you're right. That's one of the best athletes of all time.
Yeah, he is.
In one of the hardest sports to be the best at, like you just don't see, historically, you don't even see the kind of dominance that he had as an athlete, especially in like a single individual sport. Like, it's pretty impressive.
Well, you talk about all those things we've talked about already about overcoming adversity, overcoming failure, being wired, not inspired, doing whatever it takes to win, building a plan and believing in your process. He is the number one example of all of those subjects, right? He wrote the book on resilience. He wrote the book on comebacks. He wrote the book on hard work, right? The famous story of him and John Daly. John Daly walks through the locker room after a round at a major tournament to go to the bar, and Tiger's in there getting dressed, and he's like, Tiger, why don't you ever come to the bar with us? Why don't you ever come to the bar? Why don't you be a real person one time? Come to the bar and let's pound a few back. Tiger looked at him and said, John, if I had 10% of your talent, I'd outdrink you. I have to work. And it's
what a legend, dude. Yeah, that's so crazy. Yeah, that's and that was kind of left field for Monster too, like you said.
Yeah, we're still not in golf. We're in
the Tiger Woods.
Into business. Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And we're really into sports, music.
Yeah.
And girls.
Yeah.
And that's our platforms. And we do gaming, and as we've added other brands and other things, and
yeah, you can kind of diversify a little bit into different spaces, but the black can has stayed core. Right.
And in the U.S. and North America, Motocross, Supercross is the face of our brand. And the rest of the world is probably MotoGP.
Yeah.
MotoGP is very important to us.
Yeah. When you talk about sticking by people and sticking by the things that you get behind, so I'm massive into the UFC as well. I've trained jiu-jitsu for like 8 years. It's like a whole different world for me. But awesome. That's like one of my biggest passions. And so this year I got to go and do media at one of the big pay-per-view events in Vegas at T-Mobile. And it was right after you guys re-signed the deal with the UFC. And so, because I guess, like, I'm interested in your perspective on this, but from my perspective, like, I've been around motocross and supercross for so long, right? And worked with Red Bull, worked with Monster, like I've worked with Kelso at Rockstar. Yeah. Kelso booked my first flight to America.
Oh, really?
When I was like 20 years old. So I actually owe Kelso a lot. But so I've been around, right? And one of the things that you see in this world that you don't see in other worlds is the kind of print that these brands, like the energy drinks of the world, the kind of print and mark that they make on a sport, like they don't just put a logo there. It becomes like a real integral part of the brand, right? And that's worth more than money. Obviously, you guys are paying the UFC, you're paying Supercross, and there's something that's intangible there, though, right? And so I get a chance to ask Dana White a question, and I'm like, so you guys could have went with anybody. And you guys, I'm sure, could have doubled the price, and it's the middle of the octagon. That is the thing that every single brand wants. But you chose to go with Monster again. And I'm like, it's got to be worth more than money. So what is it outside of the money? I'm sure he's paid him well too. But what is it outside of money that makes you guys pick Monster? And do you know would you guess what he said?
I think I saw it, but anyway, go ahead. I can guess what he said, but I'd rather you tell it.
Well, he said COVID. He said that was the thing. He said that everyone else was telling us to shut up shop. Everyone else was putting pressure on us. Everyone else was trying to get us to shut down and fire all our employees. Like, the repercussions of that would have been astronomically bad for this company, and Monster stuck there, and Monster made it happen. So it's like, that's another massive example. And that COVID period, I mean, I've been a fan of the UFC for 15 years. Like, I remember watching before UFC 100, and that COVID period saw the biggest growth in that sport. And it's like, if you guys played a role in that in any way and keeping that going, I mean, that's like another extreme example of backing a sport or a property that you're involved with, and then it being incredibly important to them.
Yeah, well, especially with Dana and UFC, it's been a really strong relationship. It's had its ups and downs, of course, and through that, I think those ups and downs, we became a lot tighter with them, so to speak, especially with Dana. I mean, I could tell another amazing stories about it, and but Dana made that deal happen, and it was because we stuck with him in a pinch, and not just COVID, but time and time again in issues. You know, but you know, he had some sponsors that constantly wrote letters, constantly complained about his politics, about his behavior, about, you know, fighters' behaviors, and they didn't do anything about it. All this stuff. A lot of those big corporate sponsors, I mean, let's tell it like it is. They're woke. I mean, you know, and so every little political thing they didn't like, they'd run in there and write letters and threaten him. And you know, Dana don't like that. He believes in free speech. He may not agree with you, but he'll let you say whatever you want to say, you know, even if you're crazy. And
yeah. But I mean, and the system is kind of, well, if the system works right, like that should be able to happen, and then the rest of the people with better free speech, educate the idiots that believe the dumb shit.
Yeah. So anyway, we're a very unpolitical company. We make drinks. I mean, this thing right here doesn't have a opinion. You know, it's a can. It's you know, it's paint and ink, and I mean, in liquid product. I mean, it's not Republican or Democrat or white or black or, you know, none of that stuff, right? Man, we make drinks. So the last thing we're going to do is call up a guy and give him a hard time over his politics. Like, you know, he's a own personal guy. He can do what he wants, right? I think Dana appreciated that, right? So when the deal went down, and obviously the sport had grown immensely from our previous deal. Yeah. So when they came to us, the price difference from what we were paying for the past 10 years to now, it was time for an increase, right? Because the sport had really grown. The media had really grown. Dana's done it in his crew, not just Dana, the whole TKO group, everybody. They're really good. And so it was big. And they actually went out, and during the negotiating process, it was a very lively negotiation, let me say.
Really?
Yes. And so they went out and actually took the assets that we had and priced them out to other people, and it came back a lot more money than they were asking us. A lot more money. That's all I'm going to say. And we were not willing to spend that lot more money that it came back that they could do if they split up our assets, because we have it every week in the center canvas. We had these verticals. We had all that. And in the end, Dana White came in and said, they're going to be our center canvas sponsor. Work it out. So we slugged it out till we came to something we could all live with, because Dana White said, no, Monster is going to be the center canvas sponsor, because they've stuck with us in a pinch. They've stuck with us in a lot of times, right? And they're the kind of sponsor that I want. And so we would not be there without Dana White.
That's such a cool story.
So you know, I got to tell the slap story, okay? So you know, the slap thing, everybody's like, "Are you crazy? Why are you doing that?" Right?
Yeah, right.
Well, actually, I was Dana used to never call me. I knew him, and we shake hands, and I'm the Monster guy, and he's Dana, but we wasn't friends or anything. And I'm walking to my house one day, and I see Dana's number pop up. And I'm like, Dana never calls me, right?
Yeah,
and this is about
what's wrong?
Yeah, it's about 3 years ago maybe. And I needed a favor. I needed Dana to help me out a little bit. We'd be arguing over stuff with the guys at TKO, and I needed Dana, right? So I kind of wanted to do him a favor, whatever. So he calls up and he goes, Mitch, man, I got this new thing. And he's just like hyperventilating, telling me about this slap thing. He said, I'm going to send you a video. It's amazing, man. It's going to be bigger than UFC. You know me, I've seen a lot of properties. This thing's going to be great. And he's putting the Dana White sales pitch on me over the phone, right?
Yeah.
So I thought about it a minute, and I don't know. He didn't tell me how much it was going to cost or anything. I just said, I'll do it. And he's like,
no way.
Yeah, I said, I'll do it. And he's like, keep selling me. You're like,
hey,
no speed bump. He just
good.
keeps going. I said, Dana, stop. I said, I'd do it. He goes, well, I'll send you more video. I'll send you another video. You go show it to the boys. You got to go. We got to do it. I said, Dana, how many times I got to tell you? I did it. Stop. I'll do it. I'll do it. He gets quiet. He goes, dude, you won't regret it. I said, you better not make me look bad. I said, but you got to help me out on UFC, man. I'm not taking heat. Yeah, you got to help me out. And he's like, oh, man. Because I already knew from Cowboy Cerrone was good friends with his assistant, and she told him, man, all Dana thinks about that slap. All right. So I'm like, okay, I can help him out on this slap, win a little points there. Right? So
what goes around comes around.
Yeah, so we do this slap thing, and I take it to Rodney because I got to get it approved. The boss – the boss, so I got to take it up there and get him to agree to do something crazy like that. And I'm so afraid he's going to look at it like slap the thing. Like most of them would have done. And so you're crazy. Say, all right. He looks at that thing and says, "Oh, this is good. This is good. Go for it." Didn't ask me how much money or anything, man, which is another miracle, right? So I go back and he asked me some stupid number, and I said, "No, Dana, no. This is what we'll give you for it." And he goes, "Okay, I'll take it." And so down the road we go, and I said, man, you just got to make me look good. Put my brain. I don't want anybody to tune into that show and not know that we sponsor it, okay? Because I have done deals with people where you give them all their money and you look on there and you can't find their logo. My boss is like, well, we buying here. Anyway, sure enough, man, they come up with that thing. It goes viral. I mean, the numbers were off the chart, dude. I mean, from a viral standpoint or a digital standpoint, all the different platforms around the world that I can't even pronounce. It lights it up. It's easy to send your buddies a slap video, right? And and the events are super fun. So anyway, that was a home run that I kind of lucked into just on a whim.
You keep saying luck.
Yeah, it was just luck, man. I'm telling you, it was just.
Do you ever think it's not luck though? Or is it good to think it's luck?
I don't know. Everybody puts their own name on it, Some people say you get harder you work, the luckier you get, but I wasn't working hard that day. I was fishing on my boat. I mean, I was like, it just falls out there, right?
Yeah, but see, sometimes luck finds you, right?
It does. I told you in the beginning, I'm a super blessed guy, right? I'm lucky, and, not that everything in life's been lucky. It's just, sometimes it is. But Dana's a really good friend. It's if I left Monster tomorrow and was homeless, I could call up Dana White and he'd say, "Come on over."
That's awesome.
Yeah, Dana White's a good guy.
So what prompted the decision to get into UFC in the first place? Because I guess it's like a similar. You had so much success with Supercross and NASCAR, and it's a demographic, right? It's like a male audience that's into some extreme shit. And the UFC is like pretty well as extreme as it gets. So what was the thought process to even get into it in the first place? And again, keeping in mind 10 years ago, the UFC was not the UFC we know now.
When we first talked to them, it was before I got there. They had, I think it was before they did the deal with Zions. They came to our folks. And, they didn't make a deal for whatever reason, and they did a deal with Zions. And I guess the Zions people fell by the wayside, and they took ownership of Zions. And so the UFC, which was the Fertitta Brothers company, and Dana.
Zuffa back then.
Zuffa.
Yep.
Zuffa owned Zions, and they put it all over the ring and thought, get all this publicity, we can sell a lot of drinks and all that. But I think they didn't have distribution or something. But for whatever reason, it flopped and didn't do good. So they came back to us, and I was there when they came back, and myself and my team went to lunch with a guy, and he says, we're going to change UFC. Instead of it having, random local sponsors on every fighter and just looking like it's a county fair deal. We're going to clean it up, do a fighter kit, do all this stuff, and clean it really up, and really want Monster to be a part of it. And so I think the first year we didn't do it, and we finally came around and said, this is good. And I don't know who made the decision to do it. I was in the middle of negotiating in the communication process, but it would have been, again, one of our executives, founders, that would have got together, because it was a big spend even then for us. But the whole deal was, and this is something unique, that they wanted to just sell us a brand on the fighter kit, and every fighter wore it. So like Reebok used to have, and now it's Venom maybe.
Venom.
Yeah, they wanted it to be Monster on one side and every fighter. And we said, that's really not the way we traditionally do things. We really want to compete against somebody. So we want to pick our own fighters. I said, okay. So the deal comes down, and they said, this is going to work fine. It says, Dana will pick the fighters for you. Now, I think in our original deal, we didn't get but a handful of fighters that we could have branding on. We got other branding on the ring and other stuff, right? And they said, just let Dana pick them. He knows them. We're like, no, we don't want you picking our fighters. We want to pick our fighters because we have our own reasons why we would pick one over the other. That kind of blew their mind for a while. But nonetheless, we started signing fighters directly. So in addition to our deal with UFC, we signed personal service agreements with fighters. Now we can have a lot of fighters in our deal. But nonetheless, that was something very unique to the sport that it took them a while to get their head around, because nobody did
very, very common practice in Supercross and Motocross.
That's where we learned it, right? It's our roots.
Yep.
And so it, but I tell you why it works is they get a check from Monster. It says Monster Energy on that check that's sent to them with their name on it. They can cash. So they have a relationship with us. We have a manager and team that talks directly to them, works with them. They do appearances for us, totally separate from UFC. They like that, right?
Yep.
They feel like they've got a sponsor.
It's a legitimate relationship as a professional athlete.
Yes.
That's the direction that the UFC was really trying to go in that time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's worked out, I think, very well for us to this day. We use the fighters a lot for appearances, from everything from our sales appearances to content to just hanging out and having a good time. We got Sean Strickland.
Yeah. Huge moto fan too.
Huge
by the way.
Well, our moto manager, Aaron Nixon, him and Strickland are on the same wavelength. And
cut from a pretty similar cloth.
They're on the same wavelength for some reason. I don't know, and nobody else in the building really is on Strickland's wavelength except Aaron. So guess what? Aaron manages Sean Strickland. They're in love, right? And
I think
Nixon,
they call that bromance, right?
Nixon's going to kill him on a dirt bike, though. It's like, Sean, don't know you really shouldn't do this if you're going to fight next week.
It's wild, eh? He is a reckless individual, but I love it.
Oh, I love it too. And I like him. He's really a sweet guy.
Very
he really
nice
is.
guy, eh?
Yeah, he really is.
Says some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Very nice guy.
Yeah. He's a very nice guy, but he can come out with some crazy shit, and he knows it.
But you know what? It's one of those things, though, this is one of the things I always have loved about Dana, right? Is guys will do crazy shit. Like, do you ever remember, Chris Lieben back in the day? Pull up a picture of Chris Lieben. You remember Chris Lieben? One of the Ultimate Fighter 1. This dude was as fucking mad as a cut snake, right? And he red hair, would fight everyone. Look at this guy.
Oh, wow. I don't remember.
Dude, this is one of the OG guys in the UFC, right? Came through the Ultimate Fighter 1. And it's like Dana always had this perspective. Look at who I'm fucking dealing with here, bro. You want me to what? You want me to tell him what to say, tell him how to dress? This fucking guy gets in a cage for a living and beats the piss out of another dude who's also incredibly gifted at fighting. I'm not in the business of micromanaging these psychos.
Yeah.
This is not what we're doing here. And I think that level of commitment and awareness to the brand and the product and what we're all doing here, that's been something that he's like never shied away from, never wavered from. And that's ultimately been a pretty massive key to his success, because look at that guy. There's no way you're telling that dude what to do.
No.
And Strickland, cut from the pretty similar cloth.
Well, Dana's in a unique position there, though, because he can give them a fight or not give them a fight, right? He can he controls their livelihood to a big degree.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of them resent it, some of them don't. Some of them, you know, it's all over. But Dana's
But when you can work
amazing.
out a healthy relationship, which he obviously does because of the success of the business.
He's amazing. I mean, it's everything Dana's got, he deserved. He's a genius.
So how did the Conor McGregor deal come about?
We sponsored Conor early on, and we really got him in a really good deal because nobody knew if he'd win a second fight or whatever, but we jumped on him pretty early. So we were getting a smoking deal, as you would say. But he kept getting bigger and bigger, you know, till finally when he got really big and was having really big fights at the end, you know, again, we stood behind him. Another one of those stories where he gave us the deal and continued to do it because he said, you guys were there in the beginning. You guys were there in the beginning. And, in fact, I think when he fought Mayweather,
there's a Monster logo right there.
There's a Monster logo. I don't think we paid for that. And because he said, I'm going to give it to you, or either gave it to us like super cheap or something because you guys were always with me in the UFC. And, you know, no hard feelings. I've moved on and I'm a big star now and you can't afford me now. But but that's kind of the way it went. So we don't sponsor him direct anymore, but the relationship started and ended very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and just you got him in the most iconic era of his career and was a big part of like one of, we talk about Tiger Woods, right? But like, man, the Conor McGregor that was doing the animal crawling, walking in the park and just all in Conor McGregor. Like that guy, you just clip that time period and watch his motivational interviews and listen to the quotes, and just that guy was so locked in. Like he was the epitome of a martial artist and came from nothing. Food stamps in cold, dreary Ireland, and turned out to be one of the biggest stars in the history of combat sport.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What a story, dude.
It is. No, it really is. It's an amazing story. He's a great actor, too. I watched that
the Roadhouse.
He was great in that, man. Yeah, it was. He's awesome.
It's got to be quite a fulfilling thing, like a fulfilling part of your job is to be able to deal with all of these guys just in the absolute primes of their careers and just be able to see what we don't get to see on screen.
It is. And you know, more than me, it's my staff. Okay, so we have athlete managers based on the genre of sports that they're in, right? The category. We have category managers. Yeah, like Aaron Nixon's Supercross, Motocross.
Slash Sean Strickland.
Yeah. And, you know, and we have Hans Mullenkamp manages that for us. We have, you know, all these other different people. And those guys are the stars, really, because they deal with them daily. They deal with them when they have problems, you know. They deal with them when they're calling in mad about something, or, you know, or they didn't get them a shirt on time or whatever, you know. But they deal with that on a
very personal level.
They're the first line of contact. And, you know, I think the brand, even before I got there, did a good job of hiring. We don't really care if those category managers have a degree. We're not looking really for some smart young kid out of school. Yeah, that's sharp and thing. We're looking for somebody that knows that sport at a base level, that knows the mom and dads of the young kids, that knows the older ones, and that those people respect them in that category. As you know, even if they like them or not, they respect that they are in their world. Yeah, and so that's really the main reason we've been successful in sports marketing at Monster. Not because of me. I'm a garbage guy, right? And they deal with the athletes at that level, and it's a great job. They travel all over the world, our guys do, and get there with them in the good times and bad, and it's a good gig.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I can speak to it on a personal level as well, and just like dealing with all those people in those different sports and from different companies as well. Like there is these group of guys that like really do make shit happen behind the scenes in the sport. Like, you could name any scenario, whether it's a kid getting arrested or this or a fight or some social media bullshit or some visa thing, whatever it is. And it's like those guys in those roles, they become the therapist, the fix-it guy, like the mediator between father and son at times.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's a very important role that is played within the industry,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't get involved with most of these guys unless there's a big problem or a big negotiation. It's and the stories I tell about the big names and all that, I can remember them because there's so few of them really in relation to the everyday deals that our guys are dealing with, and they take care of business well enough that I don't have to deal with Chloe Kim because my athlete category manager is doing their job so well. And I have a person, Dave Gallen, that handles all motorsports, and Cody Dresser is on the action sports side and does UFC, falls under that. I mean, those guys are seasoned. Dave's been in the industry, the motocross and racing industry for years, man. And Cody was a pro snowboarder and really gets that action sports scene really well, and been there as long as I have. I think he was hired about the same week I was, and so it's we don't have a lot of turnover. The guy's been there a long time. I really like that because they get really good at it over time. Yeah, and the relationships compound over time too. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so it makes my job really easy on that front. And again, I think I spend more of my time working upstairs to get things approved, so the real people on the street dealing with these guys are the athlete managers. Yeah. Have you ever just let your mind wander to what would happen if Dana White bought Supercross? Yeah. I have. Well, first of all, I think Phil does a great job. Me too. Bro. Me too. Yeah, we can all nitpick and think things we would do different, right? And there's been times when we've leaned on them to do this, over the years. Because how long have we been doing it now, man? How long have we been into Supercross? 15 years. 15 years. I think we're at 15 years as a title sponsor. So over that 15-year period, yeah, man, we've had all kind of idea meetings and mad at them because they won't do this, and they're mad at us because we said this, all these ups and downs. But shake it all out, it's a very successful property for them and for us and for riders. And it's, so I think they've done an amazing job. Completely agree. Yeah. But there's only one Dana White. Back to Dana White. It's a very fun exercise to think if Dana White was running Supercross in what he would do, right? Or if, they have a new company now, Fume, which is Dana White and the Fertitta guys that are back together, and I think TKO's involved with them as well. Yeah. That's a powerful group of people there, man. I think they're going to do great things in sports, and who knows what they'll end up with, in the way of sports properties. But yeah, I think I'm anxious to see what they do with the properties they've just bought, which is Nitro Cross, or not Nitro Cross. Nitro Rallycross. No, not that. Nitro Circus. And there we Nitro go. Circus. Yeah. Nitro Circus. How that comes out. They got Street League as SCI. They seems to be going in a good direction with Street League initially, and so I'm anxious to see what they take on next. Could be fun. I'm just gonna paint like my little picture in my head here, right? Yeah, tell me what Dana White would do with Supercross. I want to hear what you tell me. I really want to hear what you think it would look like with Dana White on Supercross. So imagine Seattle, right? Yeah. Probably the biggest star in the sport right now is a monster kid that you know quite well, Hayden Deegan.
Imagine the press conference where Dana White sits down and we all get to go, yo, dude, Hayden Deegan, what's the deal? And it's like, just imagine the level of just like the entertainment and like the buzz that just Dana having those conversations and like being the front man and being invested in Hayden and his career and protecting him as a superstar in the sport. Think about what he could do with like you hear the way that he like talks about John Jones and you hear the way that he talks about these guys and it's like, dude, Eli Tomac, Cooper Webb, like the reason that the UFC has been so incredible is because there's been this guy that has been the fucking ultimate hype man for his roster. And dude, we have a roster. Like I make a living talking about the absolute fucking legends that race Supercross and Motocross 31 weekends a year. And he makes stars and there's a priority that he puts on knowing who's a star and seeing stardom in people and telling that story. And he sells you, he convinces you why these athletes are stars. Ronda Rousey, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas, like these people from all over the world. And he tells you their story. He makes sure you know how amazing these athletes are. And we buy into it. And we buy the fights. And we watch. And we care.
He's a master.
That's incredible.
No, he's a master ringleader there. I mean, he's the circus master. I mean, for lack of a better term. And he's, like there is no other Dana White out there. I mean, he's the one and only, I think.
Yeah.
And the other thing about him is, while he does a good job hyping that and doing that, he's really a genuine. What he tells you, he really means. I find him to be in person just like you find him on TV. If he tells you something, you can count on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's on this thing now. I'm sure you've heard him say, that he's got enough money that he don't need anymore.
Yeah.
And so he's only going to deal with people and things and
that
do
he
things
wants to.
That he wants to because he don't have to anymore.
That's called fuck you money.
That's called fuck you money, exactly. And he exactly has taken on that. Is like, you know what? If it's a lot of trouble or I'm not enjoying doing it, fuck them. I'm not doing it, right? Yeah. And so I'm going to tell it like it is. If you don't like me, fuck you. I mean, I'm sorry, but and
that can come across in a certain way. But when you have enough conviction in yourself and you've got the belief and you can accumulate enough data over your lifetime to be like, I'm a good dude, I do good business, I do good dealings, I'm a man. And I think if you've got that as your foundation, that's when you can say fuck you and people should respect that you can say that,
No, for sure. And he's got the fundamentals of life down pretty good, how to treat people, how to succeed. It's all working for him. And, like I said, I consider him a friend to Monster and to myself. I mean, we've been through some pretty good arguments over business. And, we both come out of them after the big fight and shake hands and go have a beer, right?
Yeah.
So Dana White's a legend.
Just excites me at the thought of it. Because I feel
I hadn't thought of that. I'll be honest with you. I really hadn't thought about what Dana White would say at Supercross.
Oh, right? Dude, I'm telling you. I love Feld too, and they do a great job. But there's a level, and they need a Dana White. Maybe. I agree, and I've had the conversation with Dave Prater. I've just said the model of. It's one of the most, one of my big investments in Supercross over the last 2 years. So when I came to America and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to these races and I'm really going to put in as much effort as I can off my own back. I don't get paid to go to Supercross. The content that we do doesn't pay my bills in any way, shape or form. It's a net loss on hard costs. But I wanted to go there with a goal to make the press conferences better because my favorite part of the UFC is the press conferences before and the press conferences after. And Dana White is a huge part of that. He's the first guy there, and he walks into the building, and he says, "Hey, record tickets tonight. We did fucking 21,000. We did $4.2 million gate, fight of the night bonus, blah, blah, blah." And then he takes the questions, and there's a face to the sport, and there's a guy that tells the stories, because everything's a story, and everything, all sports are narrative driven, you know, and you can get some runaway narratives.
So who would it be if you said?
Well, I'd love Dave Prater to do it. He's an awesome guy. He's a super smart guy.
I'm thinking more.
Who are you thinking?
I'm thinking more Chad Reed shaves his head and becomes that guy. Or is it, who else? Or is it Ryan Villopoto shaves his head?
Hey, I'd go Poto.
I think I would too.
He gets fired up.
He does. He can say some funny ass shit, right? I'm a big Ryan fan because we went over Europe together.
Yeah. That's a whole nother kettle.
That's a whole nother story, man. That's a whole nother story, but man, it's a good one. And
so, yeah, I think, but you know, like you go to Supercross post-race press conference, and dude, we get millions of views on our press conference shit. Like, it's just...
people want to know the riders. They
sure.
want to know this. Yeah, I think they maybe need to do more of that.
It's an integral part of the sport, and it's gotten better. Like, and Sean and his team, Sean and Joe, like, those guys are working within their own powers to make it better, and it has gotten better, right? But, I mean, I still just, like, Dave Prater sit down and be like, this was the attendance, record attendance tonight in this stadium. With streaming numbers are up. Jerry Robin got hurt. Road to Recovery has already organised this, and this. We're going to get him the best care we can. This guy's got an injury. He's already in hospital. You know, Cole Davies, broken arm, but he's all good. He's got a broken nose, a broken arm. He's getting surgery. The Deegans are getting a jet for him to get to Colorado. It's story, you know, and as a fan, it just, you get so invested and it legitimizes the sport. So
I agree.
That's among one of the things that I think Dana could bring. And I just think
maybe you need to be that guy.
I do this, man.
Maybe you need to be that guy.
But there's so much potential, and I've said it to Davey Coombs, I've said it to Dave Prater. The way that I see the numbers, like, because we cover the sport so much, and it's like there's a wave that's coming, and we've got Hayden Deegan, we've got Jet Lawrence, we've got Cole Davies, we've got Eli Tomac, we've got Chase. Like, we have stars, real legitimate superstars in the sport. Young, good looking, relevant, different.
Yeah,
from all different backgrounds. Malcolm Stewart, you know, like, we have some actual legitimate superstars in this sport, and I feel like someone like that would see that and treat it as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
no, I agree. You know, Dana came out of the fight world. Right? You know, he was into boxing before he was into UFC, and he kind of really gets that fan and that world and that business side of it. I mean, he's really that guy. I think in Supercross and Motocross, we need a guy like that is of this world, but he gets the entertainment value. He gets the, you know, the good thing that too, the role he plays is he's one of the owners, and everybody, you know, it's kind of got this whole,
there's like a
P.T. Barnum mystique about it, right? It's his show. It's his circus, right? And he actually is. He really runs it that way. I think it's his deal. I mean, it's his show. It's Dana. I know at the end of the day, the buck stops with Dana there, regardless of who actually owns all the stock in the company. The buck stops with Dana. He runs it with iron fist. Yeah. And it shows, right? You know.
Yeah, and it's all a part of the show. You know, and he's as much a character in the sport as the biggest superstars of the sport.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure. He is the biggest star of the sport.
So let's talk about Supercross then. 15 years, title sponsor. And again, it's like, what's that? 18 years.
18.
Dude, older than Cole Davies. That's insane. So when Cole Davies was -1, you guys sponsored Supercross. But this goes to, again, kind of that question that I asked to Dana, is like, it's more. Like, and I know it's more because obviously you guys failed a check, but there's activations, there's athletes, you sponsor teams. Like, there's there's a massive footprint or claw print that gets put onto the sport. And so, like, what's the decision making there? What's the ethos there? Like, because it is a very novel concept that you guys have kind of, you know, I guess, wrote the playbook on, in a sense.
Well,
am I wrong in saying that?
No.
Is it on base?
No, you know, I think before we took it on, other sponsors in the past didn't stay long, and they also didn't. It was in the day when a hay bale cover was a big sign, and they did lots of hay bales, right? And that was about it. And it looked like a very big fair race for a while.
Go back to that last photo. Tell me that's not sick as fuck.
That one here on the right.
Look at that photo. There's flames, there's a finish line, and Mercedes-Benz Stadium is packed with a young German superstar winning the race.
I got to give a lot of credit to that look to Feld, okay? Because they kind of come to us and say, this is the way we want it to look. And we look at it and go, no, you don't like that blue. You know, you got to change that. Got to have the Monster here instead of there. And we really drill down on our look, the way our brand looks, just like Red Bull or anybody else would.
Yeah.
But that general look is a lot about what they're willing to do. So if we think it gets boring, our guys, whether it be Aaron Nixon and before him Ash Hodges, they would go in there and say, hey, we got to make this thing look better. It's getting boring, you know. And they'd say, okay, we'll come up with something good. And you know, they come up with this look. I got to give them credit for that. And I think whether it was Monster or whoever, you know, Tide washing powder, they would have made it look as cool as they could. Now, do I think our logo is sexy as hell? Yeah, I do. And we got girls that look sexy as hell out there, right? And so
I've been down that road.
But yeah, you know, it just fit our brand so well, and Feld really did a good job of making us look good and working with us, be willing to do this kind of thing. Because, you know, some sponsors, they're not willing to do this, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like with UFC, they're a lot more structured. So we have to get in there, and it really had to have a good relationship for years before we can get anything changed, or, you know, to get that claw change, that can, you know, right now it's got a can in the middle.
Yeah.
To get that can instead of that claw we used to have, whoa, could write you a book on the fights we had over that one.
Really?
Oh yeah, any change to that thing until, you know, they didn't want to change it, and then they come up with the excuse that the fighters would slip on it if that black can's too much paint, and they would slip on it. You know, again, it all goes back to Dana and a big looking Dana and I, and, you know, and Dana said, "Yeah, man, you're the title sponsor. I'll try it, but if they slip on it one time, don't you fucking call me again. It's going back." You know, and
it's going back for good.
Yeah. And he said, "Hey, we're gonna do a test on Ultimate Fighter. We're gonna do it. And if them boys in the Ultimate Fighter come back and say they slipped one time, don't you fucking call me and ask for it." And I'm like, "Okay, you got it then."
But you've got to have a certain amount of skin in the game to even be able to make that request.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But over the years, Feld's been really good about allowing us to, you know, to do the kind of things, have our real edgy brand and stuff. And, you know, and I think we've reciprocated really well by activating like hell in the parking lot and making their events cool, because that's the difference in us and a lot of other companies. That is, we really try to activate our events when we're the title sponsor. We want people to have a Monster experience, feel the personality of the brand. So we do freestyle shows in the parking lot and BMX and, you know, all kind of crazy stuff like that. We've done UFC in the parking lot at Monster Cup and all that stuff, right? And so if you're a promoter, you want that going on at your events. So we have some negotiating skin there, chips there, that other brands don't go. You know, most brands hire agencies to go do that thing.
Yeah, so true, eh?
Yeah. Monster don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you are the agency.
We are the agency. Yeah. You know, like I say, our athlete managers are the agents, okay? We go and go find the thing where normally a company, like if we're, I don't know, a Fortune 500 company making consumer products or whatever, pick one. Chevrolet, Ford, whoever.
Yeah, they hire an agency.
You go hire an agency, say, we want to get into Supercross. More than that, they would hire an agency and say, what should we get into? They'd say, well, why don't you try Supercross? And here's what we'll do. We'll go hire you 15 riders and 2 teams, and we'll pick them out for you. And
I know some sponsors in Supercross right now that are going through an agency. There's a brand that is gone to an agency, and they're just like funneling out the cash. And in my opinion, they're not getting the value for money. So that's speaking to exactly what you're saying.
I'm letting you behind the curtain. But yeah, we don't trust an agency to tell us what to do or pick our riders for them, because we want the relationship with the riders, right?
Yeah.
And because you get the synergy, if you've got the relationship, you get way more than you paid for out of an athlete. You know, I'm meeting Rob Gronkowski to go to the Indy 500 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he's showing up making an appearance because he was going for Fox anyway. And he calls up and says, because he's one of our athletes, he says, hey, can I knock out an appearance for you guys while you're up there? You coming to the race? And I'm like, no, but I will if you'll give us an appearance, you know. And he's like, yeah, I'll do whatever, you know. And so he
what an animal of a human.
Oh, he's the best, man. But he gives us way more than we ever paid for. Like, and you know, at the Daytona 500, the first race back when the first year we were the entitlement sponsor of NASCAR, the very first race, we brought out Gronk to, you know, make a splash and walk around. He was contracted for a 2-hour appearance. So his plan was to fly in, him and his dad and his brothers and his buddy, walk around, cause a little noise. 2 hours at the race. As soon as they dropped the green flag, he was going to get on a plane, fly back to New England. He gets there. He's having so much fun. He says, I'm going to stick around. Well, Kurt Busch wins the race. This is another magical monster moment, okay? We're the title sponsor of the race, the first title sponsor other than Sprint in a long time. And we win the race with Kurt Busch. So we got to have a party, right? And Kurt likes to party. So Rob's like,
I like to party.
I want to stick around, man. I'll stick around. And so we get him a room, man. We go out and we party all night long to daylight with Kurt and everybody else, right? And we didn't pay for any of that. But that's because he's having fun, man. He loved it. And he's like feels part of the family.
Yeah.
And so
it's authenticity.
Yeah, it's authenticity. You get way more for your money. I mean, I'm sure Red Bull and Rockstar, everybody has stories like that too. Because, you know, and I will say that we have good competitors. You know, Red Bull's a great competitor for us from a sports standpoint.
And you maybe speak on that a little bit. Like, you need competitors in something like this, you know, because it drives the ceiling higher and higher.
Everybody needs competition. Competition drives people to be better and give the consumer more and evolve, right? And without competition, you know, freestyle motocross still be doing Superman winning the gold with, right? It wouldn't be, they wouldn't say, I ain't doing a backflip, break my neck, man. Yeah, but competition, I got to now, right? And same way in business. I mean, competition drives it. And
have you seen people in business get so focused on screwing the competition that's like they bite their nose to spite their face kind of deal?
Yeah, I think that probably happens all the time. You know, egos get involved and personalities get involved, and, you know, employees get a little too carried away with their drinking their own Kool-Aid. Yeah, for lack of a way to put it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that happens all the time. But, you know, Red Bull is we like to compete, and they like to compete against us. And so the Red Bull Monster rivalry, you know, it used to be Rockstar big time in the middle of it, more so maybe than it is now. But so they were in the fight too. And but it's a classic rivalry kind of, right? I love it. It's a classic rivalry, and that's why I love MotoGP. We meet them head to head there, right? That's why I like motocross, man. We meet our competition head to head there, and you know, I can remember so many times at the podium with Roger DeCoster, or over in Europe with what's his name? What? No, the manager, Pitt.
Oh, Pitt. Yes.
Yeah, Pitt. With Pitt, man. I like Pitt, and you know, I love to needle Pitt when we win, and he gives me the look when he wins, right? You know, and it's probably a little more tense over there than it is over here, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's healthy.
It's very healthy. I mean, yeah. I mean, I like those guys. normal people doing their job, right? Their job's to beat us, and they win races for KTM and Red Bull. And, our job's to win races too, And so it's, you respect good competition. You get mad at them sometimes, bro. You have your little competition, like football or anything else, right?
Yeah.
But, I could write books on stories about that too. And, especially, when Villopoto went to Europe.
Yeah, let's dive into that, because this is a whole thing, right? There are a lot of people that were really upset when Ryan Villopoto went to Europe. How did that happen from your... Ryan's kind of told the story on here. Davey Coombs has told the story on here. Let's hear your perspective on it all.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Okay. So, we were the title sponsor of the MXGPs.
Yep.
Right? I went over there way before Thomas started racing over there. I went over there working for Monster, right? Yeah. And I fell in love with that, the motocross, or the passion of the fans.
It's wild, eh?
Wild. I mean, they know the guy that's in 30th place, right? They walk up to the pit to get an autograph of a kid that nobody's heard of, right? And they, jump out in the middle of the track. I mean, just crazy shit. And I'm like, I love this shit.
Yeah, chainsaws. Yeah. Smoke bombs, flags everywhere.
Yeah, and it's so regional and tribal too,
Did you, speaking of this, did you see the Le Mans GP a couple of weeks ago?
I didn't.
Oh, man. That was one, this is speaking
Le Mans MotoGP?
Yeah. Zarco won.
Yeah, I saw the results. First
time, bro. This was brought a tear to my eye. I know Zarco. He's such a nice guy.
Yeah, we used to have him.
He was at Jack's wedding. So I got to hang out with him.
Jack Miller?
Jack Miller's wedding, yeah. Unbelievable guy. Sang a song on the guitar at the wedding, and he's just a legend. But he wins, the first French rider in 76 years to win the Le Mans MotoGP. I went to the Le Mans GP in 2021 when Jack was on GP. I grew up with Jack. And so me and my brother went there. We hung out with him all weekend. He got second that weekend. One of the fucking craziest things I've ever seen in my life was that MotoGP race. There was 500,000 fans.
That's what I heard. I heard he was off the chart.
Because it was the first event in France after COVID. Unbelievable. Mind-blowing. Would never happen.
Were they setting cars on fire in the campground? And
mate, they bury V8 engines in the dirt. They go to their campsite, get shovels, extract the engines, and just key bangers all night. Just exploding these things. But you're so right. So when Zarco wins, dude, it is unbelievable. But Zarco wins this thing, and it's exactly what you're talking about. The French national anthem, French rider winning for the first time in 70-something years. The sport in Europe and the passion is
great.
Just insane.
Yeah, I mean, the first time it really dawned on me how crazy they were, it was Motocross and Nations, I think, or maybe it was just a motocross race in Majoro.
Yep.
And in Italy there, Caroli's the man. And so Caroli was coming down that long hill in the back before the finish line and coming down. And I don't know who passed him. Somebody passed him. I don't know who it was. And when they did, a guy jumps over the fence and jumps out and runs in front of the motorcycle of the guy that just stayed to block for Caroli so he could pass him back. Of course, they jumped on him and hauled his ass out of there, right? And I'm like, these guys are fucking nuts, right? It was so good. But anyway, so back to the Villopoto thing, right? So Ryan had signed for 2 years with Kawasaki, and he comes up and says, I'm not going to race the second year of it. I'm going to retire. And he had always told me, him and his dad too, that, hey man, that might be fun to go over there to Europe. That'd be kind of fun. So I said, Ryan, why don't you come to a race? So I bring him to a race over there the year before, just to sign autographs and have fun, because the guys that race in America don't have time to go to Europe on vacation very often, right? I mean, they grow up racing every weekend and Lorettaland regionals and trying to make it to Loretta's. So when they grow up as kids, they're not well traveled other than in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
So a lot of them don't have a clue what's over there about motocross. And at the time, at that point in time, and this changes like this over time, but at that point in time, there were some really fast riders in Europe.
Yeah.
with Hurlings and coming on and
Hurlings, Geyser, Caroli.
Yeah, all them guys.
Yeah, Fevra.
Fevra. Yeah, they were all coming on, and there were some more. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, Tommy Searle was there at that time.
Yeah, and anyway, but there was a lot of them there, and but in America, and two, I gotta say that one of the best things in our sport of motocross is the rivalry or perceived rivalry of the Europeans versus the Americans.
Yeah.
And everybody has an opinion, right?
Yeah.
And so I went over there and watched them race, and I'm like, dude, I don't know whether they're better than the Americans at motocross or not. I know they're not as good at Supercross. They don't do it, except for a few French. And they, but in the motocross world, I don't really know, but I know these boys over here hauling ass. And I think Jeffrey Hurlings is the best in the world at that point in time. Of anybody, he's the closest thing I've ever seen to Ricky Carmichael. And so take Ryan over there, and I said, and I think Thomas is his first year over there. And we hung out with Thomas and did a thing. He signed autographs all day, and he was blown away how many people were there. And he's like, dude, this is freaking wild. You know, and I'm like, okay. So he announces he's going to quit and retire. They were all mad at Kawasaki that he's going to retire, but they were okay with that, right? Because I think there was also bad blood between the manufacturers, U.S. folks, and the manufacturers, Europe people. They didn't communicate a lot.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the issues I won't get into today. But nonetheless, so I said, hey, if you're going to quit, now I got him on contract, right? Or Monster does. We're paying. I need him another year. Right? And so he's leaving Supercross. He ain't going to race Supercross. I said, why don't you come over and race the GPs for a year? You've always said you wanted to do that. This is your chance. So he comes over and he goes, yeah, I think I would. And his dad, I love his dad, said, this will be fun. You know, this will be fun. So he agrees to it. Right? And it's gone. So he starts training. I think, and I'll tell Ryan this today, I love Ryan. He can call me up and say, you crazy motherfucker, don't you tell him that for whatever. I don't care. He's a good dude. And so, love a guy. So he says, I think I can beat those guys. He said, I beat them in the nations. I smoked all DeSalle, Clement, all them guys. He says, I've already beat these guys. It should be.
It's going to be easy.
Yeah.
Light work.
Yeah. That's what he's thinking, right? It's going to be a victory cruise, go see the world. And I did want it to be that way. And if he'd have wanted to do that, I was fine with that because I really didn't care. I don't want to say I didn't care if he won or not. I really wanted him to win more than he did, probably. But at the same time, for really what we had in mind, it didn't matter if he won or not. And
you just wanted him to enjoy the experience.
I wanted him to enjoy the experience on a personal level.
Yeah.
And on a business level, I wanted to give credibility to this series, MXGP, because all the American fans thought it was a second-rate place you go if you can't make it in America. And I knew that was not exactly the way it is. So I really wanted to prove that. And so whether he won or lost, I knew he was going to be in for a dogfight, and the world was going to say, we got a guy that just won 4 Supercross titles, and he's in a dogfight over there, right? Because I knew it was going to be a dogfight. I thought he might win it, but he's going to be a dogfight. So he's telling me out at Glen Helen, month before the season, he's leaning back, you know. Eldon Baker calls me over and he goes, don't send him over there. He's not ready. He's not ready. They're going to embarrass him. Do not send him over there. And I'm like, well, whether they embarrass him or not, we're booked. I mean, you know, it's done. We got a contract. We're going, you know. And he's like, he's not ready. He's not ready. So okay. Well, he goes and we get to Qatar, first race. And he has a bobble with his throttle or something. There's
quite a famous clip of the best rider in the world looping out his dirt bike, the poor bastard.
Yep. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know what happened. But anyway. So, anyway.
There it is. No, that's Trentino. I think it was the next one down.
That's the famous wreck at the end, right? That was his last ride.
Where's the... Here we go. Trentino. This is a beautiful track, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dude.
That's a fast track.
Couldn't go anywhere, and that's a steep drop the other side of there. He didn't want to be going straight on there, that's for sure. think he was just ambushed there. He didn't know anything about it.
Are you sure it's not Argentina?
So,
Or does it say Trentino?
This
Trentino.
says
Okay.
Trentino, yeah.
Yeah.
And Villopoto and Desau right there where he wants to be.
Dude,
Boot hanging off him.
Clement
On that
Desau
left
was
side
such a
there.
beast.
Oh, he was so fast.
outside
But
line,
anyway,
banging off the
Yeah, go to that bit. That's
To the
where
inside.
it's gonna
He
happen.
thinks about pulling away in second position, and he has. He decided to do one.
Dude, Euro Villo was pretty sick.
oh, he was,
Desau
man.
looking to go through here as well at the bottom.
Oh, there it
Here's
is,
the
yeah.
left-hander. Oh, he
Oh, Desau was after him.
He
dude.
was, man.
He wanted blood.
Suzuki at the end of the straight.
There's the loop out.
Oh, and they missed
Did
it.
a touch. No, Villopoto, whiskey throttle, wheeled all the way across. He is down, he's hurt.
Oh, what a shot. I've never seen that. I was there. I didn't see that.
Really? You were there for this?
Yeah, oh yeah. I went to all of them.
No way.
He looped it out.
Hey, that's another thing, just sidebar real quick. That has to come back to Supercross, by the way. Like, how there's no onboard footage in Supercross is, like, absolutely beyond me. But anyway, I digress.
He's struggling. Something dislocated there.
Front end.
Look at him go. Just a full handful of throttle. That is one of the best riders of all time right
Yes,
there.
absolutely. So, and, you know, he had the MotoGP rider with him.
Fabio?
No. He retired. I'm drawing blanks today. I've been working at the office all
all
day,
right.
so I'm
That's all
brain
good.
dead. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute, I say. But anyway, long story short, he goes over. That happens. Calls it a day because he's hurt. I'm fine with that. But it from a business standpoint, it changed this whole world for a period of time, a long period of time, because
Really?
after you notice over the last 5 years, everybody's been saying the Europeans are better motocross and the U.S. are better supercross. That's why, because before Villopoto went over there and got beat, they thought that was a second-rate motocross. They wasn't as good, and that it was. All of a sudden, the star goes over there, and every moto fan in America starts watching and tunes in and starts watching the GPs. And it gave GPs mega credibility that they didn't have across the pond, right? And instead of it being this old series that these old riders, nobody knows who they are, all of a sudden now everybody knows who Clement Desau is. Everybody knows who Jeffrey Hurlings is, who is a really big talent that people didn't really know because they never – so everybody starts watching the GPs.
Yeah.
And then, and I'd like to think Thomas was over there racing the lights class, and people started tuning in to see him because there was a period of time where he was winning regularly. And so it really did a lot for that series, which from Monster, if you want to spin it back to a business situation, motocross is the face of our brand. It's important to us. We have a big investment into motocross around the world. And when water rises, all boats rise, right? So if that series gets more popular, our investment pays off. So one of our challenges is to make the series that we sponsor, whether it's UFC or MXGP, the water level rise because we're investing in it. We bet on that horse. And so him going over there and not just smoking the field gave the MXGPs credibility they would have never had. And it completely changed their life over there for sure.
And again, like when you talk about sports and narratives, like the narrative has completely changed.
Right. And then they won all those donations up until this year, I think, or last year.
Yeah.
It's been all Europeans, and there's a lot of reasons why you can say why, but at the end of the day, it's pretty gnarly. And the other thing used to get me, and don't get me wrong, I like them all. I don't care if they're over here or over there, so it's all racing to me. But they'd always say it's a second-rate series, but yet some of the greatest winners of Supercross and motocross in America came from that series, right? And, I mean, Broxton.
Yeah.
I mean, you got
Chad Reed,
Jet Lawrence, his brother. All of
Tom
them.
Vial, back-to-back
Vial,
Supercross.
Yeah, there you go. Prado.
Prado.
They all came from that series.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's something there.
There's something there. They learned to ride in a real gnarly. I watched Prado's interview with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he can't wait to the outdoors. Now, I don't know. I hope he does good. Since
I
we're
think
betting
he's
it.
going to do great.
I think he's going to do good, man. That guy can get a whole shot from hell.
God, he looked beautiful on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Riding at Elsinore.
Yeah, we were friends with him in
pleasure
Europe.
to watch.
Yeah, he and Thomas were competitors.
Yeah.
They went head to head there for a while. They were 1-2 a lot.
Yeah.
And me and his dad would sit and talk behind the line every time, and he'd say, "I want to be a monster guy one day, man. Can I come to him? I want to be a monster guy."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he was great. I always got along with him great, and it was a blast. And so Villopoto though was a huge turning point in the popularity of that sport globally, not just in Europe. It's always going to be kind of big in Europe. The Europeans just they call it cross. They and it's a major sport to them there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Villopoto played a part in the history of that sport. There's no question about it.
So when you say that motocross and supercross is like the face of Monster, why did Monster go all in on Supercross and Motocross nearly 20 years ago?
That's a great question. And I think you have to go back to the beginning when Monster was really small.
Hanson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they came out with the Monster brand.
Yep.
And it kind of took off. It was getting traction. But they still didn't have tons of money. And they couldn't afford big sponsorships. The management was real conservative in that way. And so Mark Hall and Scott Sepkovic was the first person that they worked with there, They started going to action sports as what we should do because Red Bull was doing it. You got to remember, Red Bull was there 20 years before we were, right, in the world. And they were doing that. So I'm sure they thought, well, we got to go compete with Red Bull, right? So they go and actually take cash in their pockets and wait and see which skateboarder is going to make the night show at X Games, and call them over and say, hey, man, it's this green sticker. If you'll put that on there, I'll give you $1,000, whatever, no contract, no nothing. And that's the way it started. So it got going. And then the Supercross thing come around. It was like their dream to have a Supercross team. They couldn't afford a Supercross team, so they hired. First one was Brian Deegan on Hanson. He left them for Rockstar because they offered him a good deal, and Hanson couldn't afford to pay or didn't want to pay him more. And they said, "Sure, Brian, go take the big bucks." So I go, and the other one was Mike Metzger. Mike Metzger was a huge turning point for Monster when he jumped Caesar's Palace.
That's right. Right.
And
he backflipped it.
Yes.
Yeah. World record.
Yes. And so Brian Deegan, him, they were big to the beginning of Monster, but we really couldn't afford to own a team or anything. And they had Josh Hansen at one point in the amateurs. I remember at Loretta Lynn's, he was wearing a Monster helmet. And so anyway, as the company grew, they finally went to Mitch Payton, signed a deal with Mitch Payton at Pro Circuit. And it was like, at Monster, they were like, we have finally made it. We have a Supercross team. Wow, this is big. Man, we're going all in now. Right? And so we do. And before that, Grant Langston.
Yeah.
Grant Langston won Monster, their first ever title.
08?
I'm not sure the year. I think it was before that. No, it's before 08.
On
before 08.
Pro Circuit.
He won them their first title.
Was it 06 or 05?
It had to have been like 05 or before that.
Yeah. He won the West Coast Lights or East Coast Lights championship.
Yeah. But we only had Grant. I don't think we had the team. He just had Grant. But,
yeah, right.
But nonetheless, it was so we just transitioned from there. It kept going, and I think Rockstar may have had the series or was the official energy drink before us, and Phil put it out to bid, and we jumped in and and decided to make a really big move and be the title sponsor, because at that point we realized that dirt bikes, whether it be freestyle, which was a big deal to us, and Motocross, Supercross was our DNA. It's who we are. It's the soul of our brand. And I like to think of, and this is my words, not somebody at Monsters, but you often wonder how companies get so big and sell so much product off of sports that are really small when you look at this compared to football or
That's kind of
NBA
the thing
or all
with
that.
Monster, right?
Yeah, so we built this huge brand.
Yeah.
How many people in America have ever ridden a dirt bike? How many people out of that general population we're marketing to have ever ridden a dirt bike? This many, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
They may aspire to. They think it's cool, or their kids think it's cool, and it's gnarly. And it gives us our brand identity of who we are. So when they go in that convenience store in the morning thinking maybe they'll get them an energy drink, one, they look at that and they go, "That's those gnarly dudes that do those backflips on motorcycles. Man, they're crazy. That's such a fun company, man. It's about, or they got the Monster Girls, man. The Monster Girls are hot." And so it's
it's aspirational.
It's very aspirational. And Red Bull does it very well, but they're a little more, I think, white collar. We're a little more blue collar.
Yeah.
We're more every man's brand. They're a little more exclusive and more aspirational, maybe. And but we Supercross and Motocross just really fits the soul of our brand.
Yeah.
So once we got in there and we saw it worked well, the company was growing. I don't know if it was because of Supercross, right? You never know, right? But it was growing like crazy. We could afford to do it, and we just stayed with it. And so it's been a good relationship. We form, I like to think anyway, we form really good relationships with our partners, and because to stay with somebody that long, you had to have had a good working relationship and
wins together too.
Yeah, they've done well too, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you nailed it when you, like, there was a section before where you were talking and I'm like, this could be a speech played at Harvard Business School right now about just skipping the agencies. And like, there's a model that is just so prevalent in the space with these companies. Like Monster is to this day the most valuable stock or the most successful stock on the US stock market. So this is a fucking big business. This is a serious player in the US market. And they went against, and you guys went against the grain completely. And it's like, if you want to look at why Monster was able to succeed to the level that it did from the place that it did, that's so integral, I think, is like really knowing the brand, really knowing who you are and who you want to talk to, and then finding something with a correlation, like the soul correlates with what you guys and who you guys are. And it's like, that really is, and then being hands-on and not passing it off to somebody else. And it's still like that to this day. It's a crazy story. And so 2016 or 14, Coke buys in for $2.1 billion, which puts Monster at just like this phenomenal, it was like 16% or 12% or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, about 16%.
So that just puts you guys at this insane evaluation. The DNA doesn't change. That must have been a wild period of like an influx of cash, huge valuation, and everyone just being like, whoa. Change is nothing. And
That's
just
right.
keep marching forward.
That's exactly what happened. They do the deal with Coke. It gave us instant distribution around the world because they have the largest distribution system of any beverage in the world. So all those markets that would have taken us years to get distributors in, we got it overnight with Coke. But there's a culture clash there. Of course, they're a big mainstream company, 200 years old or whatever, and you got to go back in, and I give all the credit to, again, our executive, the two founders of the company, and Mark Hall and a few others there, who drove a stake in the ground that we're not going to take advice from you, Coke, on our brand, on the soul of our brand and who we are. It's not going to change one bit, and we're putting the stake in the ground that it's not going to change. And they did a great job. And again, I go back to the upper management who runs it that close, but at the same time, the decisions they made to this day. I mean, to this day, if we still have the same battles in the company over, does this fit our brand or does it not? Is it mainstream, not mainstream? Is it, team sport versus not team sport, all that stuff? We still have those fights daily. That's what we do all day, really. So we fight over that, right? Because the culture of our company is so important to our brand.
Yeah.
And so hopefully I think that'll keep working for us,
Yeah. It's just such a, and I mean, I know that from dealing. That's the boys.
That's the boys. That's Rodney on the left and Hilton Schlossberg on the right, and they two guys from South Africa that did quite well.
Just changed so much, man. Just rewrote sports marketing, in such a wild and profound way.
Yeah, and really a lot of that goes to Mark Hall, and he, Mark Hall. I like to say he kind of invented the brand, the thing, and he's just a creative guru kind of, and he's the Elvis in the building. I like, I see his car pull up, his parking spot's underneath my window, and I look down there and say, Elvis is in the building. Elvis is in the building, and he kind of lived the brand, right? Monster Mark. I mean, he lived the brand, and he put his foot down. He'd go to, he'd fight you over, and he'd fight Rodney and Hilton over decisions over our employees and, new management that come in and say, you're going to hire this agency. I've been with them for 20 years and they're the best. I get the fuck out of here, man. That guy is, he's a legend. He's not one of the original owners, founders. They brought him in, and but he played an unbelievable role. Still does. He's still around, and he's not in the office all the time now. He does some other stuff, but he's still there, and his opinion is still got a lot of weight, man. And he's on the board of directors, and he's just a country boy from Michigan.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And by this point, though, right, like it's been so ingrained that it's like in every part of the business. It's now, because culture, like that's what culture is, right? Like culture is something that happens for so long and through so many generations and through so many different people that it just exists as its own thing. And I think that Monster kind of got to that level. And it's like, it'd take a lot to change a culture. And the US is like that. There's all these different issues that you could point to in the US where it's like, that would change a lot to change that culture because it's been just drilled in.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it would take much to change it.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of have a different look on it. And it's the reason we battle so hard daily to keep the culture. It's because as we grow, you have to hire more people. And so the normal corporate America or anybody, common sense even, is okay, I'm going to go out and hire the best people I can with the best education from the best schools, and got a resume in the beverage business, so we hire them from, Coke or whatever. They all come in with background successes of this is the way you do it.
Yeah.
So over time, as you keep growing, kind of all the OG remember how we did it back in that day, is a smaller percentage of the company.
So you still have to fight, even though it's been done a certain way for so long. You still have to fight to keep
like
it.
a motherfucker, man. Okay, to keep that, right? Because kind of to the OG there, and not just OG, but the other people that get the brand, right? It's who we are, and it's been fun. It's not just a great success story. It's been fun, right? And we want to keep it that way. But as far as can you lose that culture, I think you can lose it really quick.
If you do the wrong things and hire the wrong people, and give people more license than they. Yeah, exactly. Because I could write a book. I may one day about about Monster and the people that came in with big ideas and we're going to do. We had this guy one time. It's funny. Nobody cares if I tell this story. They brought a guy in to be in upper management, and
he had come from some big company, and he thought he was the man, right? And he comes rolling in and makes a bunch of bold statements how he's going to straighten this place out. And I'm like, well, it's kind of going like this. I don't know what you want to straighten out about it, but okay, go ahead. Well, I was downstairs, and we were over at this old building. We had 2 floors, and I was downstairs in sports marketing. And they didn't have enough offices, so they moved his 2 doors down from mine downstairs, right at the end of the hall. So about the second or third week, he comes rolling in my office, closes the door, puts his feet up on my desk, and we're all wearing T-shirts and shit, and he's in there with his white button down, and his dress pants, and props his feet up on my desk, and he says, "So Mitch," says, "I hear you're the head of the Good Old Boy Club here, and I want to join the Good Old Boy Club." And I'm looking at him like, "What are you talking about, man?" And he's like, "I hear that to get the good tickets and the good VIP tickets to all the events, you have to be in the Good Old Boy Club, and that you're the Good Old Boy head of the Good Old Boy Club. So I want to join." And I'm like, "This guy's nuts, right?" Right?
What do you say?
Yeah, what do you say? So I lean back and I say, "Okay, as far as I'm concerned, you're in." You're in. Congrats. You're gonna make a good member.
You're gonna make a good old boy.
You're gonna make a good old boy. He's somewhere up north, and and he's like, "All right, good." I said, "You just come see me, bud. You just come see me. You'll be in the Good Old Boy Club." He says, "I'm gonna change this place. I'm gonna turn it around." He says, "They're making you fly coach and everything. He says, when I get in charge, he said, well, we'll get us a jet. He says, let me tell you my big idea. Like this is something novel." He goes, "Think of a big jet, corporate jet. We're going to paint it black, and we're going to put a monster claw on the tail." I'm like, "God, that's creative. How'd you think of that?"
You're a goddamn genius.
Yeah, you're a damn genius, man. And so I knew that our bosses, they're against that. I mean, they were very frugal and money conscious, and great managers. That's why our stock went through the roof, right? They're really good managers. And they were against any kind of employees flying around in corporate jets back in the day. It just didn't happen, man. And they were against it. And Rod,
they walked the walk, right?
They walked the walk, man. They were flying Southwest. I mean, they walked the walk. So I knew if he suggests that upstairs to either one of them two, oh yeah, he made us, few more mistakes along the way, and he was already kind of on thin ice after about a month, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is going to last. This guy's nuts," right? So he says, "I'm going to go talk to Rodney about that jet. You want to go?"
You should.
That's a great idea, dude.
You do that.
So he goes, anyway, so I guess he goes up there, puts his feet on Rodney's desk, and says, "Got this idea. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a jet. We're a
Me
big
and the
company
good old
now.
boys."
Yeah, we need to get a jet. We're a big company now. Need to get a jet and let's paint it black and put that monster claw on it. Would that be bad? I priceless expression. Priceless expression, Needless to say, it wasn't long. no more of that guy.
No way.
Oh, yeah. We get some really crazy stuff happened over the years, as it probably has at other places too. There's been some really crazy ones come through our place, right? And and some of the crazy ones are still there, and they're great employees, and part of the history of the place was the really crazy ones, right? But we've had some. I wouldn't trade it for anything. They should. I should pay them. I should have to buy a ticket every morning to do this, right? Yeah. It's been crazy, but the sports to this day is mainly those pillars I talked about, but mainly the sports, because we don't buy TV ads, we don't buy 30-second spots. We run some at Supercross and events we sponsor, of course, but most of those are sending you to our YouTube channel, to Dirt Shark videos or whatever, content we've made. And there it is right there. There it is. It's
double back and just see if Rodney's still not keen.
One
more time.
Maybe I should send him that picture and say, I got a great idea, Rodney. Got a great idea. Or Hilton, the new, not new CEO. They were co-CEOs, and now Rodney's announced he's stepping back in June a little bit, and Hilton's going to be the sole CEO, and he'll do great. And he would probably have the exact same look on his face if some new guy came in there and said, I'm going to buy a jet and put a green claw on it. But yeah, it's been fun. But the sports has really been what's the main platform of our marketing in the face of our company. And so it's been fun for me. It's been a real honor, and and it's not just motocross and supercross. It's really, like you say, we talked a lot about UFC. MotoGP is huge for us, and NASCAR. Got a whole chapter on NASCAR and Monster.
We need to bring you a quick word from our sponsor, Motorsport.com. I got a YZ450F that I got some upgrades to do. You know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to need some help with customer service, so I'm going to chat with a gearhead. This box showed up. It has a 2007 KTM master cylinder, a Yamaha caliper, also 2007, and a Turner braided brake lines. I feel like this is a very good upgrade for $600. Need the old hanger, so we're gonna put a bit of grease on that and get it back on, bolt her up. Caliper has been done. Now this can just get bolted on. Now, shout out to Kiefer, who I think stole this off Doug Dubark. That was easy. Nah, that was easy. This is a pretty epic upgrade. You can get OEM parts to build this little Frankenstein brake kit, or basically anything else for any brand by going to motorsport.com. This was going to be my next question. You talked about betting on the right horse before. You made a pretty crazy bet on the right horse at one point, eh?
So you've heard this story, I take it.
I've heard the tiniest bit of the story. I heard that you just bet on a horse and the horse won. So I want to hear the long version of that.
Okay. So, second time I told this story today. Third time in a week. Number one story I get asked about is American Pharoah, the Triple Crown winner, and the horse. And the see how the best way to tell this version of it, but basically, I used to live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I knew a little bit about horse racing. My brother was a big horse fan, so I kind of knew a little about it. And I'm laying in bed one morning in Marietta in my house, and news comes on, and it shows Bob Baffert, the famous trainer, talking about American Pharoah had won the first two legs of the Triple Crown, the Belmonts this weekend, and it'd be the first time in 39 years that a horse had won it because it was just too hard to win the way they do it, and all these reasons why it was hard and all that. And I'm like, and the year before he had a horse that, I can't remember his name right now, but the horse he had the year before everybody thought was going to win, and it was the second most watched television show of any television show behind the Super Bowl, and it didn't win. So here he is a year later with another horse, right? So I didn't think anything about it. I get up and go to work because my phone's ringing. My phone in my office I never answer because it's somebody selling me. It's a cold call, right? You know, sponsor my daughter in badminton in state championship. And so I never answer it. But for whatever reason, this thing was ringing, and I just grabbed the phone. And I'm like, "Yeah, what do you need?"
You did it.
And it was a guy. He says, "Hey, I represent the owner of American Pharoah, and he's a big Monster fan. He used to be in the beverage business in Egypt. He's an Egyptian fella, and said he really, really wants Monster on the horse." And I said, well, they even let you do that, man. And he's like, yeah, he's gotten all rights. He's already cleared everything. He really wants you to do it. And I'm like, yeah, what does he want for that? And he tells me this gigantic, big fucking number, right? And I'm like, well, you're crazy. He ain't going to do it, But I said, just while I got you, though, I said, what could you get? What are you selling? And he says, anything you want. He says, you can have a blanket on the horse. You can have, something on his bridle. You can have you'll get the jockey. You can have all this stuff, but the blanket would be the main thing. And
you could give it a goddamn tattoo.
Yeah, that's basically what he was saying. You can do anything you want, man. The guy really wants to do this deal, So I said, well, I don't know. I said, probably not, man, but, I'll get back to you. I'm kind of intrigued a little bit. So I look out my window, and I see Mark Hall leaving. I call up Mark, and, I'm like, so Mark, I tell him the story, and he's like, oh, I don't know. Let me think about it. Call me in a few minutes. So I call Mark back in about an hour. And he might or not be at a bar, right? And he's having breakfast at his local hangout there, And he says, I don't know about that, man. He says, I've been thinking about it. He says, but I got this guy sitting here that's been telling me about this horse the whole time. He says, he's a real horse guy. He says, talk to him. If you can convince him, see what his opinion is. Rank stranger, right? I mean, he said, nobody knows him. And so he says, so what are you wanting to do? And I tell him, man, I want to get this horse. It comes out on TV, on NBC comes on. There's the horse with a monster claw on. Jockey's got a monster claw on. I got 2 beautiful monster girls standing there beside of that horse. And when he's in the barn, they show him in the barn. He have a monster claw on him. It'll be monster on the barn and all that. And he goes, oh, I see now. Oh, he says, but the horse ain't going to win. And I'm like, I don't know. Well, it just so turns out that in my job, I meet some crazy people in life, and I met a guy in Reno one time that owned a bunch of horses that won the Kentucky Derby, Breeders' Cup. He was a famous owner of horses, and Bob Baffert was his trainer of a lot of his horses. And I had the guy's number. We were friends for a while, so I said, I'm going to call up this guy. So I called this guy named Mike Pegram. So I call up Mike, and I'm like, Mike, what if I sponsored this horse, Pharaoh? You think it's going to win? And he goes, well, I don't know. Let's call Bob and find out. So he picks up the phone. Next thing you know, Bob Baffert's calling me. He goes, hey, my friend told me to call you. What do you want to do? I said, I'm thinking about sponsoring your horse. I said, what do you think? And he goes, well, I'm going to be honest with you because Mike's such a good friend. He said, I've almost won this thing 3 times. It's almost impossible, but this is the strongest horse I have ever trained in my career. He's a Hall of Fame, good as it gets, right? Bob Baffert. And so he says, it's the strongest horse I ever trained. I ain't going to jinx it and say, yeah, he's going to not win or something, So I called my guy back, and he goes, look, he never says that. He always says he ain't got a chance in hell, that it's impossible. He says, that horse is going to win. I'm going to go bet on it. And I'm like, okay. So I go tell Mark, hey, the thing's going to win. So I go, he goes, well, I said, what do you want me to tell the guy? I ain't paying him what he asked. And he says, just tell him we'll do it. We'll get him, we'll negotiate him down. Just go ahead and tell him we'll do it. Because it's already like Tuesday. The race on the weekend. And so.
No way.
Yeah. So I go upstairs because Mark is taking off. And
Elvis has left the building.
Elvis has left the building. And so I go up and I go see one of the owners. And I I pitch him, right? He leans over and says, over my dead body, man. You're not sponsoring a horse. No way. Ain't happening. Right? Ain't happening. I'm like, okay, So I pitch him on it a little harder, It's going to be huge. Biggest television show. It's going to be wild. It's going to be really good. We could really make a big splash. Not ain't happening. Ain't going to do it. And he's just like, maybe he yells at me a little bit. Well, I walk by, on the way out, I walked by the other owner's door. He had the door open. He heard him yelling at me that he ain't going to do something. He comes in. He says, tell me about it. I can do anything he can do. So I tell him about it because I love it. I love it.
So you got a yes?
I got a yes and a no, right? And so, well, I'm thinking we ain't going to do it, right? So I go home, go to bed. Next morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone's blowing up. I look up, I got all these messages on there, and it's one of the owners calling me saying, you're out of your mind, I can't believe it. He said, so the agent that I told, yeah, we'll probably work something out, but I don't know what it is yet, he decides to go to press, and this agent in New York City was really wired up with the mainstream press, and he got, I can't remember the guy's name at ESPN, but he called ESPN, their digital guy. He put it all over.
Can you find that article of the ESPN article about the Monster deal? So this has come out.
Yeah, it came out on Twitter. It came out on Twitter the day before.
There you go.
And I'm trying to remember the guy. Darren Roble. There he is right there. There it is right there. Pull that up.
Okay. Yeah, just click on that one, yeah. No way.
Okay, so this is all before we have a deal. We got no deal. And not even really a good, it's just, hey, we'll try to work something out, but you never know. He calls, that agent does, and tells this guy, Darren Roble, who's a big deal, okay? And I got to know him well after this. But anyway, he announced it's the biggest deal ever, and all this crap. Well,
So we'll
yeah,
just
look
read
at that.
this
Mitch
first
Covington,
bit.
Vice President of Sports Marketing at Monster, said he couldn't pass up the opportunity to attach his to a great athlete. We can't wait to be a part of going down in history with our name attached to a fine American icon. That guy made most of this shit up, right? And so, I mean, my boss is yelling at me. You can hear him out in the street in Marietta. He's yelling so loud. How dare you tell him we have a deal? How dare you? I told you not to do that deal. You know, it's all over the world. It was on the New York Post, I think. Yeah, biggest deal in the history, right here in horse racing history, New York Post. My phone's blowing up, man. I got press calling me and everything else. I'm still in the bed. And so...
Because this is like 10 o'clock East Coast time by now, right?
Yeah, and so I'm in California.
So you slept through all this shit.
Yeah, so I jump out of bed, you know, shit, man. And I'm throwing on my clothes and hauling ass to Corona, and that's going to be a day, right? So I go in there, and, man, he chews my ass out really good, and, you know, and I'm like, well, are we going to do it or not? You know,
We're going to have to do it now.
Well, we, you know, that's why I call up that agent, man. I talk to the agent so bad. And I'm like, we don't have to do shit. We ain't doing it. It's off. We ain't doing it. You know, and he's like, oh, calm down. You know. So I go back. One of them wants to do it, and the other one don't. And I says, look, I'm hung in the middle, right? Let's get in the same room together. Sat down in the same room. One of them looks up and says, nah, yeah, I ain't doing it. The other one looks at me and goes, do the deal. Right? So what I do, you know, I love them both. I mean, they're both amazing guys, right? I wouldn't be here without them. Right?
That's such a tough position to be in.
Yeah, it's really tough.
High stakes deal.
Yeah, it's really tough. And so one of them looked at him and says, what did Mark say? I said, Mark told me to kind of hold the deal, you know, like keep him going, you know, keep the negotiation going, but he thought it was a good thing to do. And says, okay, all right, we'll do the deal, but we'll pick up the negotiation from here with the owner of the horse. And I said, you know, so long story short, we made a deal. And like on Wednesday, I said, I got to leave to go to New York. Get ready. We had to get a blanket made. We had to get the logos made, all this stuff overnight, right? Part of the deal was we had two monster girls going to walk out with the horse. So I had to get two monster girls. So me and two monster girls, a Mexican girl named Maria and a California blonde-headed girl named, I can't remember her name. Anyway, we load up, take the next flight out to New York, flying out there. Now, the contract's not done, so I knew that probably it might get hung up in legal, and it ain't going to get done. Like, you know, they argue over the legal language. Which,
finer details.
Yeah, and kill the deal that way. The deal won't survive that process. So this guy, Darren Rovell, and all, they had already called MSNBC. They were waiting on me to do a live interview on MSNBC. They were set up live at the track, all this stuff.
What a shit show in 1 week.
Oh, yeah, in 2 days. So here I am in a cab in New York City with two unbelievable, beautiful monster girls, right, that don't know where we're going. You know, like, what are we doing now?
Never watched a horse race in their life.
Yeah. What are we doing now? So anyway, we're in the back of the cab. And I'm like, okay, I got to call and see if the deal got done. Because I'm expecting to call in and they say, hey, they wouldn't agree to this and they wouldn't agree to that. We ain't doing it. And I got my suit on, man. I'm going, I know I got it, you know, be on TV and shit. And so I said, did you sign the deal? Under protest, I signed the deal. But I signed the deal. Horse better win. You know? And so I'm like, okay, good. I says, well, look, I got to go on TV. What would you like for my message to be? And I had said in that first article, I said, you know, Monster sponsors the greatest athletes in the world, and if he wins after 39 years, he'll be considered one of the greatest in the world. You know, it's a horse, but still.
Yeah.
Well, my boss said, whatever you do, don't compare our athletes to horses. That's an insult. You know, okay, he was mad about that, right? Anyway, so. He said, you tell him this, and 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 you tell him this. And I said, can you put that in the email for me? Because I ain't got anything to write it down with. I'm riding down the road. He's like, no. He slams down the phone, man. So I'm like, all right. So I call the other one, you know, and I'm like, hey, what do you want me to tell the press? He's like, I like what you said. Tell him we sponsor the greatest athletes in the world. If he does that after 39 years, he's the best. Tell him that. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't tell him that. Well, and then, so Mark Hall is resurfaced. He's in the office with him. And he goes, one of my bosses says, Mitch, I don't know if you told us the truth because Mark don't remember telling you to do it. I said, well, he didn't really tell me to do it. He just said, hey, tell the guy to keep going. Let's keep talking to him about it. But he was for it at the time. And Mark goes, you're gambling. You're just gambling. You're betting on the 00 on the roulette wheel. You're betting on green. And my buddy tells me there's no way in hell the horse is going to win. But good luck. And I'm like, oh, here we go, right? And so we go, long story short. I get down there, and I go see Bob Baffert. This is on Friday, the day before. They got Pharaoh out there walking around giving him a bath, and his trainer's out there, and Bob's out there, and I go over there, and they say, oh, Mitch, good to meet you finally, And we talk about our mutual friend. He's like, so what do you want to do to my horse? And I said, well, I want to put a patch here, and a patch here, and I want to put the blanket on him. I got this girl's going to walk out, and I'm laying it on him. He looks at me and says, we're not doing any of that. We're not doing any of that. And I'm like, what do you mean we're not doing any of that? I got a contract. You don't see it? No, I don't need to see it. That's between you and the owner. Once it comes into this barn, it's my horse.
Oh.
And he said, I'm superstitious. So I don't know what he's wanting, a sponsorship or something. So I'm like, well, you know what? I tell you what, maybe we sponsor you for the horse. You wear a monster pin sitting in the stands. They're going to have cameras all over him, right? Be bad luck. I'm superstitious, Mitch. And I'm like, look, you don't know my boss. He is going to sue you for the rest of your life over this contract. I've got it right here that I get these assets, and if I don't get them, he is going to sue everybody in New York. I'm just telling you. And I'm coming unglued on the guy, and he's like, good luck, bud. Go talk to the owner. That's between you and the owner. So I go see the owner, and he's like, don't worry, I'll take care of Bob. I'm like, thanks for doing the sponsorship, man. Hey, you're great. Hey, everything's good. Everything's good. Okay, get there the next day. He says, we're not running a blanket because it's hot. And it's too hot for my horse, so I'm not going to run a blanket. So that big asset's out the window. And he says, you can't get the girls anywhere near my horse because he'll smell the girls and it'll mess him up, and I ain't running that risk. He says, so no girls. So, basically you can have the boots on the jockey or whatever you want to do with Victor. To me, man. That was Baffert. And he says, and by the way, keep the girls away from me too. Because my wife's jealous. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Are you kidding? So I'm panicking. Now it's getting race time. They're getting ready to take the horse out, and I'm losing my shit. Right? I'm coming unglued because what's going through my head is he's going to win this race. My people are all watching this thing with bated breath, and if he wins and he don't have any monster marks on, not only are they going to sue him, but my ass is gone. I might as well not come baback to California, right? I'm out of here, right? I ain't going back.
He's staying in the stables.
Yeah, it's like getting the lottery and it pays $2, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's just like it ain't happening. So I go to the main grandstands up there in the suite. The owner's up there entertaining all his millionaire buddies and bragging about having a Triple Crown horse and the day of his life, smoking big cigars and all that shit. I go get the agent that sold it to me. He's walking around in a seersucker suit with a straw hat, smoking cigars. I said, I want to talk to the owner now. So I go talk to the owner. He calls down, talks to Bob, says, give him something. So Bob agrees, so, hey, I'll try to do something, but I ain't letting him have those girls and all this stuff. So I said, I want to see the jockey. My agent guy goes, oh, we can't go down there. There's 200,000 people here. We'll never get, they're not going to let us in the jockey room. He's already in the jockey room. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we going to see the jockey. My only chance. Hail Mary time, right? So we go down there. He distracts the guard, gets in an argument with him, and I jump in, and I go in the jockey room. I walk in the locker room, and there's all the jockeys for the race, and I'm like, where's Victor Espinoza? And they said, he's in that room over there, and there's a room about this size with a little Rocky horse in there, and he's getting loose, right? They give him his own room because it's such a special day and a special event, right? And he's going to make history. He's in there doing his thing. And I go in there, and I got a sack. I got 2 bags in my hand. I'm wearing a suit and tie. I got 2 bags in my hand. One's full of monsters, and one's full of stickers. And I go in, and I say, Victor, you don't know me, but I'm with Monster Energy, and my deal I made with Mr. Zayat, he's going to pay you part of what I paid him. But he goes, he's a crook. He ain't going to pay me. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I need a favor, man. I'm in a jam. I said, whether you win or you lose, they're going to ride up to you on a horse, NBC is, and stick a microphone in your face and ask you questions about it. I said, if you will drink a Monster at that point and get on camera drinking a Monster and wear these stickers, I'll give you $15,000 cash when we get back to California. Yeah, and he looks at me and he goes, I'll help you out. You got more stickers?
No, dude.
And I said, yeah. And I said, yes, I do. So I give him these drinks. He says, leave it all here. Leave it all here. I'll take care of you, man. I'll take care of you. Don't worry. Calm down. He was calming me down. He's like, it's okay.
He's talking you off the
He said, he is. He really is. I love this guy. One of my favorite people in history, okay? Yeah, he's like, calm me down. I just met him. Anyway, he's like, I'll take care of you. Don't worry. So, okay. So we go, and I get the girls on the camera, and we do a bunch of crazy stuff. So many people, I couldn't get to the race to see it. I'm 100 deep, and I'm like, I don't want to watch. I can't watch because I'm out of here. Funniest thing, as I'm walking to the race, we're racing NASCAR that day, and Joe Gibbs, Coach Gibbs, he's our team owner, and he calls me up. He thinks I'm at the NASCAR race. He calls me up and goes, hey, man, it's Joe. He says, you at the track? Come by the trailer. Let me tell you something. And I'm like, Joe? I said, turn on the TV and watch the horse race. If that horse don't win, I'm coming straight to Charlotte to see if I can get a job sweeping floors in your shop because I'm out of here. He's like, what? I said, turn on the horse race, and I hung up. So I go, anyway, yeah, there's Joe. See what the Monster thing about? I love Joe,
That's
man.
awesome.
Anyway, long story short, part of the deal, the girls are supposed to be in victory lane. That's part of the contract and all this stuff. Well, he wins the thing.
Could you watch the race?
No, I couldn't see it, but I didn't want to. I was too shook up. I mean, I'm in a basket case. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I mean, it's like it's too much. I mean,
It's been a big week at this point.
I ain't slept in 3 days, right? Now everybody's screaming and yelling and banging. It's like nuts, right? So anyway, I got my brother and my son met me up there, and another guy I do business with. Anyway, they're up in the stands watching, and I'm down there, and I just can't watch. Well, I hear him come down the front stretch. I knew he was winning because that crowd went nuts. Like 250,000 people freaking out. And I knew it. We had it. So he wins. I like to have a heart attack. And sure enough, when they come up to him and say, ride up to him with the horse in NBC, and you can probably find that picture somewhere, or the video, they stick the microphone in his hand, and he said, in his face, and they said, what were you thinking, Victor, when you got to the first turn? Because he won it in the first turn. He cut everybody off. They said, what were you thinking, Victor? And he says, I was thinking I wish Pharaoh had one of these Monsters because I'm all jacked up. And dude, it was box office gold, man. I'm telling you. And I'm like, whoa, this is so unreal, right? And so everybody rushes to the podium or whatever they call it, big winner's circle. Yeah. And it was like a riot scene. All those 250,000 people trying to go down there. And the New York cops were out there with billy clubs beating people back.
No way.
Yeah, so I got the two girls, and part of our deal was to get in that shot with Bob Costas and all them people, right? So I'm pushing them through there, Well, the American girl, the blonde-headed lady.
He's wearing a hat, dude.
Victor, it looked like you had a pretty easy time of it up front early, and you just came up a little bit late in the stretch. What happened?
Yeah, he bounced out of there very nice, and he just looked around on the lead. But
that's not the scene where
really
he said what he said.
Yeah, different one.
Yeah, like that's after he's already back in victory lane, after victory lane, winner circle. But anyway,
so the blonde-headed girl from California.
Yeah, she kind of has a panic attack because, and I don't really blame her. I mean, it was a mad scene, dude. I'm telling you. And the cops were not nice, okay? And they was trying to block me from getting up there with the girls, and I threw a fit. And somehow or another, I got them through there. Got him up to the front. Well, she's kind of lost it. The other girl, man, she's handling it in space. She sees the opportunity because you look out there. I've never seen a sea of cameras like this before in my life. When we broke through that crowd and got up to where that victory celebration is, like
the Parc Fermé kind of.
Yeah, when you got up there, the wall of worldwide press, I've never seen anything like it. It's like whoa, and so. One of the girls really thrived on that. So she pushed everybody out of the way, and she got up there, and we did good. And so anyway, the story's so crazy because she's like, can you just get me an Uber and get me out of here? I said, there's 250,000 people here. You think an Uber can get in here? Just calm down. It's gonna be okay, right? So we can't get out. So we go to the barns area where our shuttle bus is parked that we came in on, and we're just killing time. And Victor Espinosa is the first Mexican jockey ever to win a Triple Crown race. So all the grooms and people working the barns they were Mexican descent. So they were partying.
Huge
tequila was flowing. It was a huge deal. And
very passionate.
Yeah, and Maria was too. She was like, and she, by that time, she had been standing by Victor all day. That afternoon, she was like really into it. She was partying, drinking, and she put something on her social that offended the other girl. The other girl was in the car. She jumps out of the car and comes back. It's full-on girl fight.
No.
Yeah, guys, they're going at it, man. I have to get between them, and calm down.
You're kidding.
Oh, yeah, it's full-on. So, anyway, we go back to the room, finally get home. She locks the other girl out of her room because they ain't speaking. Oh, it's just a crazy shit show, right? It's just crazy. And all this time, but I don't care. We're partying, man. We won this thing. You're talking about, when that horse won, it's like, whoa, after this, it's like crazy, right? The phone's ringing off the hook. They wanted me to go on Good Morning America and do all this stuff on Monday morning, not on Sunday. So I was going to have to stay there a whole nother day, right? Well, I wake up the next morning hungover as shit. We pulled an all-nighter, right? I was so bad that there was this, I woke up that morning and I felt this weight on my chest. And so I reach around and I feel this crystal like a trophy laying on my chest, I'm still drunk probably, right? So I feel this thing and I'm thinking and I'm dreaming and I think they gave me the trophy. This is the trophy. They gave me this, right? And I'm dreaming that this is the trophy. I wake up and it's the lamp off the table. Anyway, long story short.
You had the kind of hangover that you should have had after the week that you had.
Yeah, and so anyway, I'm supposed to get, I told them, I was partying when they called me to come on Good Morning America. So I told them the only way I'm coming is I'm bringing the Monster Girls. And they said, bring them. And it was going to be Victor and, so I woke up the next morning hungover. You know how you feel guilty when you're hungover. Everything you say, I can't believe I did that, everything. So
you got the fear.
Oh, yeah, I got the fear and everything. So yeah. She was all excited, though. Maria was, because she's going to get to go on TV, right? And I don't blame her. So she run out buying her dress. I told her, Monster buy her dress to go on TV on, she's out there, I'm like, you know what? I ain't staying here another day. I've had enough of this show. I'm done. I'm going home. So she comes back in with a dress. I'm like, we're going home. So, huh? I'm like, we're going home.
Done.
Done. Okay, it's done. But so anyway, it turns out to be, a crazy story
That's a crazy success story.
Yeah, it's
against literally all odds.
Yeah, it was, and the way the whole thing come down, we ended up in a major dispute over the deliverables on the contract because the guy didn't give us what we bought, but we ended up settling it after about 3 months. We settled with him and everybody was happy. We got tons of exposure out of it, and it was it was a fun thing to look back on, okay?
Not at the time, though.
Not at the time. At the time, it was a whirlwind, right? It was just too many things happening. A lifetime of crazy stuff happened in 4 days' time. Would I trade it for anything in the world? Probably not. It was an amazing thing, but it was, that's probably the most requested story I get when I go around. They say, "Come on, man, tell us the horse story." I told it 3 times. I had to speak at a leadership development thing at Monster Wednesday, and they really just wanted me to tell stories about how the brand goes, and as I was walking in, before I spoke, a lady came out and said, "Oh, we're so glad you came. You're going to tell stories." And, I'm like, "Yeah, that's what you want me to do. I'll tell stories." And she said, "Well, I've already told them the horse story." And I was like, "Oh, you did? I didn't know you did the horse story." Yeah. And I didn't tell it then because she had already kind of leaked part of it, not those details. She had no clue, right? She just said, "Hey, got this horse and it won, whatever. But and then today, the CFO, who's been there longer than the founders, it was before they bought
the
Hanson's.
juice company.
When it was the juice company, he was like employee number one. It's a wonderful guy named Tom Kelly. He's an amazing guy. He's still there, and because he wasn't that old, I think, when they bought it. So he brings a new employee in my office today. Say, hey, meet so and so. She's gonna do this and gonna do that, and then says, you got to tell her the horse story. Say, it's the second time I've told it today.
It's such a, it's a fantastic story and a fantastic outcome, but it kind of encapsulates the success of the brand, though, right? Is like you empower these kind of outside the box renegade thinkers with a lot of integrity and the brand at heart, and you give those people, like agency and authority to like make shit happen and trust in those people. And that's what you get, and I know other people at Monster that operate like that. I know people at like Red Bull that operate like that. Like I think that really kind of sums up like why these brands have been able to be so successful and so impactful and change cultures of sports and, like really break ground, is because that's a built-in ethos of the people that succeed at those brands.
You could very well be right. I really don't know. Some things happen in life that you don't know. Like I don't know how TVs work and the remote control works. I can't really define that for you, right? I don't know why Monster succeeded. I know a lot of things we did, and you can say that's the secret sauce, or that's why we did. The company operates just totally different than your traditional corporate thing. Like, I went to business school. The reason I knew I was going to stay at Monster my whole career is because it's the first company I ever worked for that did everything the opposite of what they told you in business school. Right?
Yeah,
I like it. It works. Like having meetings. We don't have a lot of meetings. Like, you can ask employees in sports about it. I hate meetings because they need to be out doing their job instead of meeting. Unless if I need to talk to them or we need to have a meeting, we'll have a meeting with just them, not a big staff meeting with all of them in there, because they don't really care what's going on in skateboarding. My moto guy don't really need to know what's going on in the ski world. He can go talk to the guy if he wants to know, right? But I don't want to kill their whole day sitting around killing a whole meeting and stuff. So we don't do things like that. It's open door policies. The only time a door shuts if you're talking personal something inside the room. Other way, I don't make appointments. You want to come see, or at least with people inside the building. If they want to come see me, just come to the door of my office. I'll tell you if I'm busy, or come back in 5 minutes, whatever. But anybody can come. And it's the same with our chairman. You don't have to make an appointment to see my chairman. That the guard at the front gate or the receptionist or whoever, they want to go talk to the CEO, walk up there, stand in line till he's off the phone, and walk in and introduce yourself and start talking. And he'll be very interested to hear what you got to say. If it's not pretty good, though, he may kick you out. But hey,
but the door's open.
But the door's open, right? And it was that way in the beginning. That's the thing. People used to line up at Mark Hall's desk because you didn't make appointments. You just go up there. So people would be lined up, Or if you did make an appointment, we had a guy I worked for us one time. He was a pretty high up guy, and came from a traditional company, and he would call to their assistant and say, hey, can I get an appointment with Mark, right? And they'd say, well, he looks like he's going to be okay around 4. Come at 4, whatever. Well, you go up there at 4, there may be 5 people in line in front of you, and they ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And he said, I had an appointment at 4. And they're like, oh, yeah, he'll see you. Just stay here. Well, it may be 6 p.m. before he looks up. And they worked all hours, right? It may be 6 p.m. before he's ready for you, And if you leave, you're out of line. And that would drive them crazy. Like, I can't believe it's disrespectful. I make that appointment, my time's valuable too. I'm like, get over it. It's if you want to talk to them,
get in line.
And so they're, as you can tell, I'm huge fans of their success, and I don't know why it worked. again, I go back to like motocross and stuff. Where the amount of product that we sell worldwide to be really, how did it get started over a sport this big? I read a book one time called Tipping Point about, and there's a chapter in there on hush puppy shoes. And they were about to go broke and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, these hipsters started wearing them in California, and it got all this momentum. And now all of a sudden, it was the thing to have. And they re-energized their company, and they made a lot of money and did real, real well. And it was like those hipsters, a very small population, tipped the whole thing. And like I think freestyle motocross and Mike Metzger jumping Caesar's Palace and those kind of things did that for Monster.
They were the tipping point.
I think they were, and that's gospel according to Mitch. It could be wrong. I don't know. I'm really got no clue. Again, I don't know how to sell drinks. I'm the sports guy, right? And so don't take anything I say is really worth a whole lot. But it's fun to talk about.
So from the gospel of Mitch then, on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
So putting aside Monster's success, what are some of the things that if you're giving advice to a young person or you're giving advice to me on a personal level, how to succeed in business and life and in a relationship to their employees and co-workers? Like, what's some of the core tenets that you would want to pass on?
Well, I had to give a speech last week, so I got a ready answer for you, okay? If you ask me next week, I'll give you something different, right? If I study up, I'll probably give you a lot smarter answer. But you know who Morgan Wallen is?
Yes.
So he dropped an album
last
week, and he's got like 30 songs on it. And I knew I was having to speak to a group, so I was, what am I going to talk about? But I see that list of songs. There's a song on there called Skoal, Chevy, and Browning. Like Skoal, Chevy trucks, and Browning rifles. And I thought, well, here's another redneck song about hunting and fishing, chewing tobacco, and trucks, and riding on dirt road, right? But no, what it was about was old Morgan went hunting with a guy, and the guy gave him some life lessons, how to succeed in life. And it goes something like, what's the marketing slogan for Skoal? Just a pinch between your cheek and gum. If you want people to trust you, you have to be there in a pinch. Always be there in a pinch. If you want to build relationships, you have to be like a Chevy truck, like a rock. That's their slogan, like a rock, Chevy truck. Right?
Yeah. And
the last one may be the most important. Like a Browning rifle, you have to shoot them straight. So, and I went on, I gave examples of each, right? But, you have to develop, you have to stand by people in bad times. It's easy to stand by popular people. It's like riders, it's easy to stand by them when they're winning. Some brands drop them as soon as they lose or step out of line, right? They just go through them. And, so standing by people when they, in bad times is critical. The second part is, I like to say you need to be wired, not inspired. To be steady, you have to wire habits that's going to make you successful. And they're not always easy to do because you're not always inspired. And you have to wire those habits to be steady like a rock. And shooting straight is not as easy to say, hey, I'm just going to go tell it like it is. Because if you just tell it like it is all the time, that's pretty easy, but you don't have no friends. I mean, your people, you've got to develop a skill and work on it and develop a skill to where you can, when you have hard conversations with people that you don't want to have, that you need to have, that one, they understand what you just said. You don't beat around the bush, and they don't walk away from there saying, well, I'm not really sure what he meant by that. No, you have to develop a skill to shoot straight, but you also have to develop that skill to where they know you were telling the truth and you did for the right reasons, right? And whether they hate you for it down the road or not, they'll probably look back and say,
and respect you for it.
But they can respect me for telling you, right? And so those skills, if you go back to standing by people when they fail, ingraining consistent habits that you know are good, and shooting people straight, I think is pretty good. So that Morgan Wallen song, I go back, old Morgan Wallen there, man, gave me pretty good answer to that question, I think.
Mate, fantastic conversation. Thank you for making it happen. You are an incredibly busy guy, and we got you on the way out of California. But this was honestly so much fun. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're good at what you do. I looked at your stuff last night, and you're really good at what you do. And so keep doing it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, man. Good deal.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.